Chapter 744. Tian Chanzi smiled embarrassedly and quickly changed the topic, preparing to slip away. Tang Jing grabbed him and asked, "What's going on with Princess N? Why did you take her as your disciple? Her talent is not bad. The key is why her?" Tang Jing asked. "Hey, she is a princess of a country. Taking her as a disciple would give me a lot of face. Do you think I'm not messed up enough?" Tang Jing did not know whether to laugh or cry. Tian Chanzi shrugged and said, "What does your romantic debt have to do with me? You win. Don't you want to leave? Get lost." Tang Jing was angry. Tian Chanzi heard this and did not leave. He said in a deep voice, "This time I came to find you for a serious matter. After this interruption, I almost forgot." Tang Zheng looked at him suspiciously. "Do you know about the Azure Dragon Hole?" Tang Zheng nodded and then shook his head. "I have heard of this name. It is a mysterious organization that is as famous as the Li Palace and the Martial Organization. However, it is even more mysterious. There is no news about the Azure Dragon Hole." Tian Chanzi turned to Marshall and asked, "Do you know?" Marshall shook his head. "I don't know." Since even the Martial Organization does not know about the Azure Dragon Hall, I have long since noticed this organization. Do you really think that I am playing around? Let me tell you, I went to investigate the Azure Dragon Hole. Tang Zheng was slightly surprised and asked, "What are the results?" Tian Chanzi's expression also became serious and said, "The results are not much, but there are some clues. The Azure Dragon Hall has a very close relationship with the Martial Organization and the Li Palace. I even speculate that the Azure Dragon Hall is the actual controller of these two organizations." What? Tang Zheng and Marshall were both shocked. Especially Marshall, the shock in his heart could be imagined. She grew up in the Martial Organization but never thought that there was a mysterious power behind the Martial Organization. Tian Chanzi seemed to have already expected their reaction, and said casually, "The original sect leader of the Martial Organization, Wu Junshan, was forced to leave the Martial Organization, and there was a mysterious power involved." Marshall's heart skipped a beat as she remembered the inside story her master had told her. Back then, it was a few elders and the Li Palace's palace master, Granny Li, who joined forces to force the sect master. That's right. The older generation of the Li Palace and the martial sect clearly knew of this secret. They secretly colluded with each other and tricked Wu Junshan. Wu Junshan was the sect master of the martial sect for many years, but even he didn't discover this secret. It can be seen how deeply the other party hid. Tian Chanzi said solemnly. Marshall was also deeply shocked. Even with the sect master's intelligence, he was actually deceived. The other party had truly hidden too deeply. Therefore, I suspect that the Azure Dragon Hall is actually in control of the Li Palace and the Martial Organization. I'm afraid that no one, not even the government, would have thought that these three organizations are not scattered sand, each doing their own thing. Instead, there is a secret link that is tightly linked together. When the time comes, the three families will unite and the power that will erupt is unimaginable. Tang Zheng was secretly speechless. The Martial Organization and the Li Palace had nurtured countless martial experts, and there were even several great Master Realm martial artists. Their strength was even greater. If they were originally one body and complemented each other, then the seriousness of the situation would indeed exceed their expectations. The Azure Dragon Hall is so mysterious and powerful. Just what kind of organization is it? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Tian Chanzi shook his head regretfully. The Azure Dragon Hall is too mysterious. It's as if it never existed. An outsider would have no way of knowing its secrets. However, there is nothing in this world that I, Tian Chanzi, can't find out. I spent a lot of effort and finally found a useful piece of information. Seeing a few people looking at him with burning eyes, Tian Chanzi enjoyed their fervent gazes. He coughed and said in a long voice, "The person with the highest authority in the Azure Dragon Hall is called the Revered Master." Revered Master. Tang Zhang and Marshall looked at each other. Marshall firmly shook his head. He had never heard of this name. Yes, it's the Revered Master. He is the master of the Azure Dragon Hall. I'm afraid that Granny Lee and the Marshall Organization elders are all under his command. This Revered Master is so powerful. Yes, his cultivation is too mysterious. No one knows about it, and no one knows his true appearance. Of course, there is no way to find out. How do you know this information? Hee, Sword Pavilion. Tang Zheng exclaimed. He was no stranger to Sword Pavilion. After all, he had fought with the Sword God in the Changbai Mountains, and the Sword God had inexplicably retreated. Sword Pavilion was established by the Sword God. Could it be that Sword Pavilion knew about the Azure Dragon Hole? I told you before that I fought with the Sword God and he lost to me. Later on, I paid attention to the Sword God and found out that Sword Pavilion and the Azure Dragon Hall are inextricably linked. Sword Pavilion is not big, but the swordsmen it cultivates are extraordinary. Not only Sword Pavilion, even the Sword God is a member of the Azure Dragon Hall and is restricted by the Revered Master. Tian Chanzi's words were really shocking. This argument almost made Tang Zhang and Marshall's jaws drop to the ground. If that was the case, then how big was the Azure Dragon Hall's power? Then how terrifying was the Revered Master's cultivation? He did not dare to guess at all because he could not guess. Then what should we do next? Tang Zheng asked. Tian Chanzi shrugged and said, "The investigation has reached a dead end. Even I am powerless. I can only wait for an opportunity to see if there is any further discovery." Tang Zheng sighed and said, "It seems like the dangers in this world are not as simple as I thought." Of course. Actually, from the beginning, we have ignored the strength of martial artists. Back then, the martial artists were able to expel the cultivators from this world. In addition to luck, the strength of the martial artists was also a very important factor. If there were no strong martial artists, it would be impossible to do this. But look at the strong martial artists today, they don't have the strength to do this. Only a few hundred years have passed. It is impossible for the strength of martial artists to deteriorate so much. Tian Chanzi said earnestly. Tang Zheng's heart jumped and said, "You are saying that the Azure Dragon Hall is this strong martial artist? What was revealed is only the tip of the iceberg. It should be so." Tian Chanzi said without hesitation. Tang Zheng frowned deeply. Hearing this news, he could not be happy. The feeling of being spied on by a ferocious tiger and wolf was not good. However, since the other party is temporarily holding back, we have no good ideas. We can only wait and see. Tian Chanzi said regretfully. Martial Organization Elder and Grandma Li, don't you know about the Azure Dragon Hole? Why don't we start with them? Tian Chanzi said embarrassedly, I haven't found their base camp yet. I can't catch them even if I want to. Tang Zhang had an idea. He looked at Marshall with a meaningful gaze. Marshall understood and hesitated for a moment. To her, the Martial Organization had deep feelings. Since she was young, she was strictly forbidden from telling other people the details of the Martial Organization. However, she did not hesitate for long. The current martial order sect was no longer the martial order sect in her heart. It was a martial order sect that had been forcefully taken over by a few great elders. Furthermore, they had even schemed to frame her master and mistress. This was absolutely unacceptable. I can take you to the Martial Organization, Marshall said resolutely. Tian Chanzi and Tang Zheng were overjoyed. They said ecstatically, with you leading the way, we will definitely be able to find those elders and interrogate them for information about the Azure Dragon Hole. Marshall nodded solemnly, I also want to know about the Azure Dragon Hole. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief and said, "This matter is not urgent for the time being. I just came back, so it's better for me to rest for a few days before leaving." Tian Chanzi shrugged and said, "I can do it any time. This is my phone number. Remember to inform me when it's convenient. I will be in the capital for this period of time, so I will take my leave first." He was too embarrassed to stay with the Empyrean fairy anymore. This was simply an inhumane blow to him. Seeing that Tian Chanzi had walked far away, Tang Jing, Marshal and Empyrean fairy looked at each other in dismay. The house was already in a mess, and Tang Jing did not want to go back. He would leave it to Anne to clean up. Ding ling ling. Suddenly, his phone rang, interrupting Tang Zhang's thoughts. It was a call from Su Ying Tian, and as soon as the call connected, Su Ying Tian threw a series of questions at him. "Tang Jing, you just came back and you already made such a big commotion. You even tore down your own house and made Princess Anne homeless. What exactly are you doing?" It was obvious that the National Security Bureau had sent people to secretly protect Princess Anne. When they saw the situation at his house, they immediately reported it to their superiors. Su Ying Tian received the news. However, he did not know the specific details, nor did he know that it was caused by the battle between the Empyrean fairy and Tian Chanzi. As Tian Chanzi's disciple, the smart princess Anne was very good at hiding the truth from the authorities. Tang Jing quickly explained, "That was accidentally caused by me sparring with someone. Don't make a fuss." "You're still not making a fuss. You almost scared the residents there into thinking that it was a terrorist attack," Su Ying Tian said snappily. Tang Jing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was there a need to make such a fuss? He quickly promised that this kind of thing would never happen again. Anyway, that house was already destroyed. Moreover, Anne was still there. He did not plan to go back. He planned to buy another house and settle down. Moreover, this time the house was obviously bigger. Otherwise, it would not be big enough. "You better stop for a bit. Don't let the dragon group get hold of you. Xing Feng can't wait to find evidence against you," Su Ying Tian earnestly advised. "I know. I will try to avoid it in the future." Su Ying Tian sighed, I really don't know what to do with you. You say that you always run around and don't pay attention to school. Where did you go this time?" "I went out for a stroll to relax. After experiencing the island nation incident, I should change my mood." Tang Jing casually made up a story. Although he had a good relationship with Su Ying Tian, he was still a government official. If he told him about the incident at Emperor Qin's tomb, it might not be a good thing. "It's good to relax. Since you're back, then you better be 120% alert. There is already a sign of something," Su Ying Tian said in a deep voice. Chapter 745. Although Tang Jing had guessed it, he did not say it out loud. Instead, he asked, "What is it? Last time, you reminded us to pay attention to the missing people in the country. Now that we have found some clues, we are working hard to investigate. If there are results, we might be able to follow the clues and find out something," Su Ying Tian said. Tang Jing said that it was indeed so. He had guessed that this was the case. At that time, he had sternly warned the other party to guard against the 100 Faces Star Lord using the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice formation to summon the demon clan. There were so many people, not just one or two. As long as the other party made a move, they would definitely be exposed. But Tang Jing did not feel happy. Because, once Su Yingtian's words were confirmed, then the lives of tens of thousands of Huaxia people would be threatened. This was definitely not something that Tang Jing wanted to see. "When will there be a final result?" Tang Jing asked. Su Yingtian hesitated for a moment and said, "I can't say for the time being, but I have already sent elite troops. As long as it is really a trick of the 100 Faces Star-Lord, we will definitely be able to discover it in advance. Okay, then I'll have to trouble you. For the time being, he could not come to a conclusion, so he could only wait. After hanging up the phone, he saw that Tang Zheng was thinking about where to find a place to live when Mu Hongyan called. Tang Zheng was very carefree as a hands-off shopkeeper. Everything was controlled by Mu Hongyan. One could imagine the hardships involved. Therefore, Tang Zheng was very respectful to Mu Hongyan. Sister Mu, why are you looking for me? Tang Zheng, you're back in the capital? Hehe, you're quite well informed. I just arrived and you already know. Tang Zheng said with a smile. Mu Hongyan did not seem to be in high spirits and said, Tang Zheng, are you free? Come to my house. Ha! Tang Zheng was slightly surprised. Mu Hongyan had never mentioned anything like asking him to go to her house. These words seemed to be somewhat ambiguous, and he couldn't help but think of the time in the 100,000 mountains when he was seriously injured and couldn't move, and Mu Hongyan took care of him in every possible way. That scene had too many subtle feelings that could not be described with words, revealing a trace of ambiguity. Tang Zheng quickly drove away these distracting thoughts. Now, he had enough women around him. Moreover, Mu Hongyan was in charge of the company for him. He didn't want the relationship between the two of them to be awkward because of this inexplicable and complicated relationship. Moreover, there was still Nana between them. Nana was so cute, he couldn't bear to do anything to hurt the mother and daughter. Speaking of Nana, he hadn't seen her for a while. He wondered how she was doing. Since Mu Hongyan invited him, he certainly couldn't refuse. He also took the opportunity to visit Nana. Alright, I'll be right there. Tang Zheng hung up the phone and looked at Marshall and the mysterious Lady of the Nine Heavens. Marshall's eyes were filled with reluctance to part with her after a long separation, so he naturally could not bear to let her leave alone. As for the mysterious Lady of the Nine Heavens, it was better to look at her, in case she caused trouble again. Let's go together. Tang Zheng made his decision. In a while, he would treat these beauties to a meal, so it wouldn't be too difficult. Moreover, he would have to ask Mu Hongyan to find a house. The three of them took a taxi to Mu Hongyan's high-end district. Mu Hongyan had already been waiting behind the door for a long time, but when she saw the two beauties beside him, she was truly shocked. Wu was an old acquaintance. As for Empyrean Fairy, as a woman, she could deeply understand the charm of Empyrean Fairy. Even if Empyrean Fairy deliberately hid it, it could not escape her fiery eyes. She muttered in her heart. Where did Tang Zheng find such a beauty? He really didn't lack beauties by his side. As they entered the house, Tang Zheng looked at her deeply and said, Sister Mu, you've lost weight recently and are a little haggard. Is it because you're too tired from work? Sigh, I'm really too incompetent. Such a big company has been handed over to you alone. Mu Hongyan squeezed out a smile and said, It's nothing, I'm already used to it. This is my field of expertise, the capable do more work. Then why did you call me here today? Mu Hongyan's face darkened. She turned her head and pointed at the bedroom door and said in a low voice, Our family's Nana is throwing a tantrum with me and doesn't want to bother with me. I think only you can persuade her, so I've troubled you. How could it be troublesome? Sister Mu, you don't have to be so polite with me. Mu Hongyan's heart relaxed and she smiled. What happened to Nana? In the past, because of her body, she never went to school. Now that her body is better, I want her to integrate into the lives of her peers. So I found a very good school for her to experience the life of a normal child. But I didn't expect that after a few months, she didn't want to go to school anymore. I tried to persuade her a few times, but she still threw a tantrum with me. Just now, I taught her a lesson and she cried. Now that she's tired from crying, she fell asleep. Mu Hongyan said helplessly. She was in charge of a large company and had countless employees. She managed everything in an orderly manner. But when it came to her daughter, she was helpless. Tang Zheng understood Mu Hongyan's painstaking efforts as a mother. He nodded his head and said, "I'll go in and see her." Mu Hongyan was overjoyed. "I'll help you greet your friends." Pushing open the door and entering, Nana was quietly lying on the bed. There were still traces of tears in the corner of her eyes. She looked like a sleeping little elf, making people's heart involuntarily soften. When he walked to the bedside, her long eyelashes flickered and two pairs of big eyes opened. In an instant, those crystal-clear big eyes were filled with pleasant surprise. She was like a little swallow flying from the bed into Tang Zheng's arms. "Brother." She tightly hugged Tang Zheng's neck, unwilling to let go. Her tears turned into a smile. "Brother, it's really you. Nana missed you so much. Nana finally got to see you." Tang Zheng stroked her soft black hair and said, "Nana, brother missed you too." Nana nodded her head. "I knew that brother would miss Nana." "Nan, are you obedient?" Tang Zheng carried her up and leaned against the bed, letting her lie comfortably in his arms. Her eyes rolled around and hesitantly said, "Nana is very good." "Really?" Tang Zheng stared straight into her eyes. Nana guiltily lowered her head and pouted. "Nana doesn't want to play with the other kids in school. They aren't as good as brother. Nana wants to live with brother." Tang Zheng felt warmth in his heart. His little daughter was even more attached to him. "Has Nana grown up?" Tang Zheng asked. Nana nodded her head. "Nana has grown taller and has grown up. You have to learn to be independent and learn to play with other kids. That's how you've truly grown up." Tang Zheng gently guided. Nana raised her head and thought for a while. Then, she shook her head fiercely. "No, Nana only wants to be with brother." Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. However, he deliberately put on a straight face and said, "But what about the other kids? They don't stay at home all the time. They go to school with their school bags. Nana's little brain started working as she said seriously, "That's because they don't have you, brother." How did this little brain grow? She was able to deduce many things from one case and even refute him. "Nana, they still have their own family. They aren't any worse than brother. In fact, many of them are better than brother. But they still go to school." Tang Zheng persuaded. Nana's little head shook like a rattledrum. She said firmly, "No, they aren't as good as brother. In this world, other than mommy, no one else is as good as brother. No, brother is as good as mommy." Looking at her bright and determined eyes, Tang Zheng could not help but sigh at her intelligence. This little brain of hers was much better than Tang Zheng's back then. Moreover, she could think in a roundabout way. "Since Nana said mommy is good, why did you make mommy angry?" Nana pouted and said aggrievedly, "Because Nana doesn't go to school." "That's right. Mommy is so good to Nana. Nana has to be good to mommy too, right?" Nana thought for a moment and then nodded. "So, Nana has to go to school and be friends with other students. This way, Nana can truly grow up. Mommy and I will be very happy and proud of Nana." "Really?" Tang Zheng nodded seriously, "Of course." After pausing for a moment, he suddenly remembered something that he had never done before. "Nana, do you want to become like brother in the future?" Nana's big eyes were like stars as they blinked. She said without hesitation, "Yes." "Good, then if Nana obediently goes to school, I will teach Nana very powerful martial arts. In the future, you will be as powerful as me, or even more powerful than brother." "Really? That's great." Nan directly jumped up, and with a pod sound, she heavily kissed Tang Zheng, cheering, Nan is so happy, so happy. Nan wants to learn martial arts. Nan Nan wants to go to school. Mu Hongyan heard the commotion and walked in. Hearing Nana's voice, her heart felt warm. She smiled at Tang Zheng. He really did have magical powers. He was able to coax Nana back so quickly. Mommy, I'm sorry. Nana was wrong. Nana will not be naughty in the future. I will go to school with other children. Nana obediently apologized. Mu Hongyan's eyes were moist. She almost burst into tears. She hugged Nana in her arms and emotionally said, "My good daughter. Nana wants to learn martial arts. I want to become as powerful as brother and then protect mommy." Nana waved her small fists and vowed. And Nana is the most powerful. Mu Hongyan looked at Tang Zheng. She knew that he was going to teach Nana the cultivation method. Nana's father was also a cultivator. This could be considered as her inheriting her father's business and fulfilling her wish. The three of them came to the living room together. Nana directly hung onto Tang Zheng's body. She was unwilling to part with him for even a second. Tang Zheng also hugged her dotingly, fulfilling her wish. Empyrean Fairy and Marshall had already clearly heard the movements in the bedroom. Of course, they also knew that Tang Zheng was going to teach Nana magic. Marshall did not have much of a reaction because she already knew a thing or two. Empyrean Fairy's reaction was very strange. Ever since Nana appeared, her gaze never moved away. She stared straight at Nana. Tang Zheng sensed her strangeness. Just as he was about to ask her what was wrong, she solemnly shouted, "She can't learn from you." Chapter 746. Seeing the Empyrean Fairy's firm denial, everyone's gaze focused on her. But seeing her incomparably serious expression, they couldn't help but feel curious. Mu Hongyan only knew the Empyrean Fairy's name, but not her identity. In her heart, she was silently guessing the relationship between her and Tang Zheng. She couldn't help but ask curiously, "Miss Fu, why do you say that?" Tang Zheng coldly glanced at Tang Zheng and said, "His technique is not suitable for her. Moreover, with her aptitude, she can have a better technique." Mu Hongyan was slightly surprised, but also a little indignant. Nana's cultivation was her wish, and it was also a rare opportunity. What right did she have to interfere? She was about to refute, but Tang Zheng had an idea. He stopped her and asked, "Do you have a suitable technique for Nana?" The Empyrean Fairy placed her hand on Nana's head, gently stroking her hair and said, "Of course, if she takes me as her master, she will definitely gain more than learning from you. Take the Empyrean Fairy as her master." Tang Zheng's eyelids suddenly jumped. This was a great opportunity. He didn't deny the Empyrean Fairy's insight. Moreover, her cultivation was unfathomable. If she was willing to take Nana as her disciple, Nana's future achievements would definitely be limitless. "Are you serious?" Tang Zheng asked seriously. The Empyrean Fairy raised her neck and said, "Of course." Mu Hongyan looked at the two in confusion. She still didn't understand the situation. In her impression, Tang Zheng was already an excellent candidate for her master. She didn't expect that halfway through, someone would suddenly appear. Moreover, she didn't know anything about the Empyrean Fairy. However, she believed in Tang Zheng. When Tang Zheng looked over, she understood what he meant. She nodded and said, "Tang Zheng, you decide." "Okay." Tang Zheng nodded. He was slightly excited, but he didn't immediately agree. Instead, he took the initiative to ask, "You said that Nana's aptitude is very good. Do you have a specific explanation?" Nana was plagued by yin qi when she was in her mother's womb. However, because of the yin qi in her 8 extraordinary meridians, her limbs and bones, she was plagued with illness since young. But after being cured by Tang Zheng, the yin qi turned into energy that circulated in her body and nourished her body. Tang Zheng also knew that her physique was suitable for cultivation. But he didn't feel that she was as outstanding as the Empyrean fairy described. Therefore, he wanted to hear the judgment of the Empyrean maiden. Who was her daughter's master? Who was her master's master? Who was her daughter's master? Fairies, who was her master? Her fairy's master. Master's master. Nana was the only one who was leaning in Tang Zhang's arms. Her eyes were wide open as she looked at one person, then another. Of course, in her small eyes, the Empyrean fairy's beauty still moved her. She couldn't help but feel a sense of closeness. The Empyrean fairy wasn't in a hurry to answer. Instead, she asked, when she was in her mother's womb, was she plagued by yin qi? After she was born, she was plagued by illness. Mu Hongyan was stunned. She subconsciously looked at Tang Jing, thinking that he was the one who told her. Tang Jing shook his head. The Empyrean fairy's eyes were indeed as sharp as torches. Her judgment was so accurate. Seeing Tang Jing nod, the Empyrean fairy said, in ancient times, there were people who wanted to cultivate a special physique. When the mother was pregnant, they would use a secret method to nourish the fetus in the womb with yin qi. Many of these fetus didn't live to be born. The fetus died in the womb, and some died quickly after birth. There was another type of fetus that had a tenacious life force. When they were 5 or 6 years old, they would cultivate a secret method. This secret method was very special. It was tailor-made for them and could rapidly increase their cultivation. When everyone heard this, they all looked at Nana. Wasn't she the type of person that the Empyrean fairy was talking about? However, it wasn't to cultivate this type of physique on purpose. It was all a coincidence. Tang Jing tightly hugged Nana. His heart also became excited. If that was the case, then although Nana had suffered a lot these past few years, everything had its own destiny. It turned out that the first bitter and then the second, this was the opportunity. If she could really become very strong in the future, then it would be a kind of compensation for the pain. Mu Hongyan's eyes were already red. Tears welled up in her eyes as she said with heartache, who would be so ruthless to do such a thing to their own child? Obviously, as a mother, she would rather her daughter be safe and sound. She wouldn't want her daughter to have to suffer such pain. The Empyrean fairy seemed to be used to it. She said, although this kind of action is risky, if it succeeds, then there will be great rewards. Not only will the child benefit, but the mother will also benefit greatly. Although you are no different from a normal person, your physique has undergone a great change. There is also a trace of yin qi lingering in your body. This yin qi won't harm you. Instead, it will change your physique bit by bit, making your body stronger. You can think about it. Ever since you gave birth to her, has your body become much better? Mu Hongyan was suddenly startled. She muttered to herself and couldn't help but recall bits and pieces of the past few years. Nana was sick. Not only did she have to take care of her daughter, she also had to go around seeking medical treatment. She also had to deal with the matters of the company. She also had to deal with her mother-in-law and her brother-in-law who had always coveted her beauty. It could be said that she was multitasking. If it was an ordinary person, they would have long been exhausted. Although her heart was also very tired, her body had never had any problems. People in the outside world directly called her a superwoman. She often laughed it off and didn't look into it. Now that she heard the Empyrean fairy's words, she finally realized that before giving birth to Nana, her physique wasn't so good. This meant that the Empyrean fairy's words were not false. She had actually received benefits from her daughter. However, her daughter had suffered unimaginable pain. Thinking of this, her heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife. Tears flowed out of her eyes. The strong woman Mu Hongyan also finally exposed the most vulnerable side of a woman. She hugged Nana and sobbed, "Nana, mother is sorry." Nana reached out her small hand and stroked her mother's hair. "Mother, don't cry. Nana will be very good and won't make you angry again. Nana will go to school. Mu Hongyan heard this and her heart felt even more painful. She heavily kissed Nana's face and said, Nana is the most obedient. Mother loves you the most. Nana also loves Mother. Nan Nan raised her jade-like face and kissed Mu Hongyan on the cheek as she said in a childish voice. Seeing that everyone was looking at her, Mu Hongyan took a deep breath and gradually restrained her emotions. She said embarrassedly, I was too emotional. I'm sorry. The Empyrean fairy didn't find this strange and continued to say, your body is also suitable for cultivation. It is precisely because mother and daughter have benefited that there are people coming wave after wave to fight for a chance of survival. Nana's lifespan shouldn't have lasted until now. She must have been saved by someone, right? Mu Hongyan looked gratefully at Tang Zheng and said, all of this is thanks to Tang Zheng. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be here today. Although he saved her, he only treated the symptoms and not the root of the problem. Her lifespan is still not long. The Empyrean fairy pointed out. Mu Hongyan's face immediately became pale. Back then, Tang Zheng had also told her this. The life-continuing pill could only extend her lifespan by 10 years. If she wanted to continue living, then she had to cultivate. This was the only way to live for a long time. I wonder what method you used to extend her lifespan? The Empyrean fairy asked curiously. Tang Zheng was slightly shocked. Nothing could escape the Empyrean fairy's fiery eyes. Tang Zheng was becoming more and more unable to see through her depth. The life-continuing pill, 10 years of lifespan. Tang Zheng said. The Empyrean fairy's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. You actually have the life-continuing pill? Yes. In the past, I even thought that if something happened to Nana in the future, I would continue to give her the life-continuing pill to ensure her safety. The Empyrean fairy snorted and laughed, ridiculous. He didn't know why she had this kind of reaction. You think that the life-continuing pill can be taken endlessly. One life-continuing pill gives 10 years of lifespan. 2 life-continuing pills give 20 years of lifespan. Tang Zheng was speechless. He really didn't know the answer. Let me tell you, the life-continuing pill can only be used once in a person's lifetime. This is a heaven-stealing technique. Do you think it's as simple as playing house? A person can only extend their lifespan once. Even if they take more life-continuing pills in the future, it won't help. The Empyrean fairy said without any trace of politeness. Ah! Tang Zheng was shocked. He really didn't think that the life-continuing pill had this kind of restriction. But thinking about it carefully, he realized that the Empyrean fairy's words were very reasonable. If this was true, then as long as they took the life-continuing pill, wouldn't they be able to live forever? Wouldn't that be immortality? A person's body has its limits. Every day, it will age. The life-continuing pill isn't omnipotent because it can't awaken life force multiple times. It can only be used once in a person's lifetime. So if they want to live, they must maintain their body's vitality. Moreover, the life-continuing pill's 10 years of lifespan isn't omnipotent. Even if you kill him and destroy his body, he will still die without a doubt. What 10 years of lifespan is there to speak of? Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. His expression became more and more serious because he thought of more problems. His grandfather Tang Dehai's lifespan was extended by 10 years. But he was already old. If 10 years passed, his body's functions and vitality would be exhausted. Wouldn't that mean he would also leave him at that time? No. He couldn't accept this situation. He was very clear that as long as there weren't any accidents, he would definitely be able to live for a long time. He didn't want to not have his grandfather by his side in his life. Ever since he was young, the feeling of relying on each other was already deeply ingrained in his bones. Then how can I solve this problem? Tang Jing impatiently asked. Cultivate. And cultivate a cultivation method that is suitable for you. This is the way to immortality. The Empyrean fairy gave the answer. Mu Hongyan seemed to have grabbed onto a life-saving straw. She looked at the Empyrean fairy and asked, "You're saying that if my daughter becomes your disciple, she will be able to overcome this crisis and live forever?" Chapter 747. Mu Hongyan excitedly looked at Tang Jing. Seeing him nod, she said, "Okay, Nana will be your disciple." Empyrean fairy's eyes flashed with joy as she nodded reservedly, "Okay." Tang Jing rarely saw joy in Empyrean fairy's eyes. Her mood was like an ancient well that was always calm. However, becoming a disciple could cause her mood to fluctuate greatly. This made Tang Jing very curious. He looked at Nana and wondered if Nana's aptitude was so good that the Empyrean fairy liked her so much. However, he didn't ask in detail. He believed that Empyrean fairy wouldn't lie. Although the two hadn't known each other for long, he had an inexplicable sense of trust towards the Empyrean fairy. The ceremony was very formal. Nana knelt down and kowtowed to the Empyrean fairy. This was requested by the Empyrean fairy. Nana confusedly became a disciple. She tilted her head and asked, "Big brother, then Nana can't learn martial arts from you in the future?" Tang Jing rubbed her head and gently said, "Your master is more powerful than me. You'll be even more powerful if you learn from her." Nana's expression darkened as she said, "But Nana wants to learn from Big Brother." Seeing that she was disliked by her disciple, the Empyrean fairy swept her gaze towards Tang Jing. Her gaze was incomparably sharp, like the edge of a knife. Tang Jing was embarrassed and hurriedly persuaded, "Nana, be good and learn from your master. In the future, Big Brother will test you and see who's more powerful." Nana held her chin with her small hand and thought for a while before reluctantly saying, "Okay, Nana is the most obedient. I'll learn from my master and wait for Big Brother to test me in the future. However, Big Brother will always be the most powerful person in the world." Tang Jing blushed a little. Wasn't there someone even more powerful in front of him? He wasn't so thick-skinned as to admit it. He smiled awkwardly and brushed it off. Mu Hongyan was very happy. It could be said that the stone hanging in her heart had been lifted. She said in high spirits, "Since you've become my disciple, then there must be a banquet. Let's go out and eat." With so many people, it was indeed not easy to cook at home. Therefore, they drove Mu Hongyan's car and went straight to Li Hongqing's private restaurant. This place had almost become Tang Jing's designated place to receive guests. As usual, Li Hongqing was at the door early to greet them. Although she already knew that Tang Jing was surrounded by beautiful women, she was still shocked by the beauty of the Empyrean fairy. Especially when a man like Tang Jing walked together with three great beauties and a little beauty. That scene was extremely shocking. When the other guests saw this scene, they couldn't help but stop to watch and secretly point at them. Tang Jing had already made a name for himself in the capital. These guests were either rich or noble. Most of them had heard of Tang Jing's fierce reputation. After a private conversation, no one dared to have any ideas about these beauties. Although their beauty was attractive, it wasn't as important as their lives. There were even many people who took the initiative to greet Tang Jing and hand over their business cards. Tang Jing's eyes were sharp. He noticed that a few of them were familiar. He had seen them at Ji Wuxiang's club before, so he couldn't help but nod and greet them. Then, the group was personally received by Li Hongqing to a private room. Along the way, they attracted a lot of attention. Some people even took the initiative to stand and make way. Tang Jing was surprised. When did he become so powerful? As if seeing through his thoughts, Li Hongqing waited for them to sit down before saying with a smile, "Young Master Tang, your illustrious reputation in the capital has spread. Especially at the top level, there is no one who doesn't know of you. It can be said that your reputation is like thunder. Not many people dare not give you face. Tang Jing laughed involuntarily. Am I that powerful? Of course. Li Hongqing nodded seriously. Didn't you teach some people a lesson at Ji Wuxiang's club a while ago? That's right. What's wrong with that? Li Hongqing said with a smile. Of course there's nothing wrong with it. But there is one thing that you might not know. What is it? No one has ever dared to cause trouble at Ji Wuxiang's club. This is his reverse scale. At that time, there were people who didn't believe it and caused trouble. On the same day, both sides disappeared from the face of the earth. Li Hongqing's tone was relaxed, but the words she said were not relaxed at all. There was a kind of killing intent that hit him in the face. Tang Jing was shocked. That club's guests were all rich and noble. How powerful was it to disappear from the face of the earth? Although young Master Yan had already told him that Ji Wuxiang was not ordinary, he had just ignored it and did not take it to heart. But now that he heard Li Hongqing's words, he knew that he had been too careless. Young Master Tang, not only did you teach those ignorant playboys a lesson, you also obtained the support of Ji Wuxiang. This is enough to shock everyone. Hongqing may take the liberty to ask, could it be that young Master Tang and Ji Wuxiang have some kind of close relationship? Li Hongqing looked at Tang Jing with curiosity. Tang Jing slowly shook his head. I didn't know him before, so how could we have any kind of close relationship? Seeing that his expression was serious and that he was not lying, Li Hongqing was even more shocked. Just one meeting was enough to make Ji Wuxiang look at him in a new light and even break the rules he had set. Young Master Tang was really not an ordinary person. He always gave people surprises. Because of the club, these people are even more afraid of me. Tang Jing asked inexplicably. Yes, fear is only one of the reasons. There is also respect. They revere you. In fact, with young Master Tang's performance after coming to the capital, even without this incident, it is enough to make them revere you. Li Hongqing said sincerely. Tang Jing smiled embarrassedly. You're exaggerating. How's business recently? Thanks to young Master Tang, business has been good. While they were talking, the delicacies were like flowing water on the table. Li Hongqing accompanied them and poured wine, but her gaze swept over Emperor and Fairy from time to time. Tang Jing only introduced her name, so Li Hongqing could not guess her actual situation. Without a doubt, there was no such person in the capital. When she saw Mu Hongyan solemnly toast to Emperor and Fairy, Li Hongqing knew that this was a banquet for apprenticeship. She was even more shocked. Who was Mu Hongyan? She was the person who supported the Long family's business empire. Now that she had left the Long family had fallen. Under her management, Tang Zhang's business was thriving. If this kind of woman wanted her daughter to be apprenticed to a master, then this master must be extraordinary. She could not guess, but she did not dare to ask. She just quietly accompanied and watched. Dong dong dong. The sound of knocking came from the door. Everyone subconsciously looked at the door. Li Hongqing frowned. Who was so blind? Didn't she say that no one was to disturb them? She quickly got up to open the door, but was met with a familiar face, the young master of the Yan family, Yan Luyun. Ha, young Master Tang, you really are here. You have too much face. I wanted to book this private room just now, but President Li refused no matter what. This best private room has already become your private room, and it is usually not open to the public. Yan Luyun walked in with a big smile. Tang Jing also went up to greet him. Among the 4 young masters of the capital, he was the closest to Yan Luyun and the one who could talk the most. However, after hearing his words, Tang Zhang was slightly surprised. Li Hongqing actually treated him so well. He was really ashamed. Their parents also had nothing to say about him, but he didn't seem to have helped them much. Young Master Yan's words are too serious. This box was reserved by young Master Tang long ago. Of course I can't do anything about it. Li Hongqing explained. Yan Luyun understood and smiled. He didn't bother about such a small matter. His gaze swept around and looked at the Empyrean fairy in surprise. However, he quickly moved his gaze away. Although the other party's beauty was soul-stirring, she was sitting with Tang Jing, so he definitely wouldn't give her a second glance. Tang Jing took the initiative to invite Yan Luyun to sit and curiously asked him why he was here. Yan Luyun pointed to the door and said, "Everyone knows that young Master Tang is here, so of course I have to come. You haven't been in the capital during this time, so I couldn't find you to eat and drink. I will be in the capital during this time, waiting to be summoned." Tang Zhang said with a smile and took the initiative to introduce Fu Yao. Fu Yao didn't even look at him and focused all her attention on Nana. Yan Luyun didn't feel left out. Instead, he felt more and more that the other party wasn't ordinary. He was trying to guess who the other party was. After 3 rounds of drinks, Yan Luyun said, "Young Master Tang, there's no time like the present. Let me arrange the following activities." Obviously, he wanted to spend more time with Tang Zhang and deepen their relationship. Tang Zhang glanced at the Empyrean fairy and said with difficulty, "Young Master Yan, I won't hide it from you. I still haven't found a place to stay tonight, so I still have to find a place to stay." Find a place to stay? Yan Luyun was stunned. Even Li Hongqing was flabbergasted. With Tang Zhang's identity and status, how could he not have a place to stay? Who would believe this? But Tang Zhang's face was serious, so he definitely wasn't lying. Yan Luyun's heart moved as he said, "I have an empty property. If young Master Tang doesn't mind, you can directly live there." Li Hongqing also wanted to say the same thing, but after hearing Yan Luyun say it first, she swallowed her words. Moreover, she knew that if other guests heard Tang Zhang's words, they would definitely offer their houses without hesitation. This was a rare opportunity that only came once in 1,000 years. What was a house to them? Tang Zhang immediately shook his head. Although he had a good relationship with Yan Luyun, he wouldn't take advantage of him for no reason. Many thanks for young Master Yan's good intentions. I'm preparing to buy another house, preferably a bigger one. Tang Zhang said. There were too many people around him and the house was too small. He didn't even have a place to sleep in the living room. A bigger one, of course a villa is the best. My house is a villa, just right for you. Yan Luyun continued to recommend. Young Master Tang, if you continue to be so courteous with me, then you don't treat me as a brother. Let's go. We have nothing to do anyway. Let's go take a look first. Seeing Yan Luyun being so enthusiastic, Tang Zhang really couldn't refuse, so he could only agree. Tang Zhang got into Yan Luyun's car. Mu Hongyan drove the other 3 and followed Yan Luyun to their destination. Half an hour later, they arrived at their destination. Chapter 748. When the car arrived in front of the courtyard, Tang Zhang realized that he had still underestimated Yan Luyun's generosity. Young Master Yan was indeed extraordinary. This was not an ordinary house, but a villa that was hidden in the green mountains and clear waters, blending into the environment. In the center of the capital, it was truly a treasure trove that was difficult to buy even if one had the money. Isn't that too polite? Tang Zhang sighed with emotion. Yan Luyun did not mind, and said generously, "This place is close to Yanqing University, so it's convenient to go back and forth, it's just right for you. This is the key, take it, don't be polite with me." The few of them walked in to take a look. There were many rooms in the 2-story villa, with an independent garden and swimming pool. It was incomparably luxurious. The women's eyes lit up. Tang Zhang could see the satisfaction in their eyes, so he did not argue and accepted it. That night, he stayed there, and even Nana insisted on staying, sharing a room with Mu Hongyan. Yan Luyun only invited Tang Jing to visit the Yan family as a guest when he was free. After that, he bid farewell and left, and secretly sent someone to transfer the villa to Tang Jing. Just like that, a priceless villa easily changed owners. Of course, compared to Tang Jing's identity and value, this was just child's play. Yan Luyun did not feel the slightest bit of heartache. On the contrary, he was secretly delighted. Yi. That night, Tang Jing started cultivating. He and Tian Chanzi had already agreed that once his cultivation stabilized, they would go to the martial sect to see the elders and investigate the truth of the Azure Dragon Palace. Thus, Tang Jing used his sleeping time to enter a meditative state and cultivate. The innate qi produced by the Jin Dan flowed through his meridians, consolidating his cultivation and tempering his body over and over again. The three-clawed golden dragon inside the dragon seal shone with a golden light, causing Tang Jing's entire body to be bathed in a golden light, making him look incomparably majestic. Under the refinement of the genuine qi, the primal chaos Vajra mantra started to circulate quickly, causing his muscles and bones to become exceptionally tough. When the sun rose in the sky, the golden light on his body increased greatly, and a layer of metallic luster filled his entire body from the inside out. His meridians became extremely tough, as if they were forged from steel. He suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes flashed as he shouted in surprise, "Rebar!" The third stage of the chaotic Vajra spell. He did not expect that after his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, the chaotic Vajra spell would also have a huge breakthrough. This was actually related to his experiences in the ancient tomb. He had been severely injured by Qin Shi Huang. Whether it was his internal organs, body, or meridians, they had all suffered considerable damage. Later on, when he formed his golden core, his power increased tremendously. His true qi nourished his body and healed the damage. It was precisely because his body had suffered such a fierce blow and was nourished by the genuine qi that his body naturally became stronger. In addition to the chaotic Vajra spell, his body's resistance to attacks naturally increased, reaching the realm of steel. He moved his body, and his bones made cracking sounds. He had a feeling that even if an ordinary bullet hit his body, it might not be able to harm his life. When he walked out of the room, he smelled the fragrance of breakfast. Mu Hongyan was wearing an apron and was busy. The sunlight outside the window shone on her body, and she was like a wife bathed in radiance, causing one's heart to tremble. Mu Hongyan's beauty was completely different from other women. It was a mature charm that did not require any deliberate movements. Her every movement emitted a charm that caused one's heart to ripple. Seeing this scene, Tang Jing could not help but think of the charming scene of the two of them being alone in the 10,000 huge mountains, causing his heart to become restless. Mu Hongyan seemed to have sensed the fiery gaze and raised her head to look. Seeing Tang Jing staring straight at her with a fiery gaze, she could not help but panic and her cheeks flushed red. Although she was no longer a young girl who was ignorant of the world and was a strong woman who had experienced hundreds of battles in the business world, she was experienced and knowledgeable. However, every time she faced Tang Jing alone, all of these experiences would turn into nothingness. On the contrary, the nature of a little woman in her heart would be exposed, catching her off guard. Right now, it was like this. She really had the urge to run away, but she forcefully suppressed it. Her cheeks were burning hot, but she pretended to be calm and asked, "You're up?" Tang Jing was startled. He immediately calmed himself down and said, "Sister Mu, it's too troublesome for you to wake up so early to make breakfast." "It's not troublesome. It's more hygienic to make it myself than to buy it outside," Mu Hongyan said guiltily. "Let me help you." Tang Jing volunteered, "I'll scoop the porridge." "I'll do it. There's no need for you to trouble yourself." Mu Hongyan tried to snatch the bowl from Tang Jing's hand, but she accidentally bumped into it, causing the porridge in the bowl to spill out and fall directly onto her chest. "Ah!" she screamed in panic. The porridge that had just come out of the pot was still very hot. It spilled onto her chest and the rice soup even flowed into her white chest. One could imagine the taste. Tang Jing did not expect it to be like this. He turned pale with fright and hurriedly used his hand to brush off the hot porridge. His big hand intimately came into contact with her chest. Mu Hongyan froze. She was dumbstruck as she looked at the big hand on her chest. It had already completely covered that area. Suddenly, she wished she could find a hole to hide in. Her eyes were dripping with tears. She was both embarrassed and anxious, causing people's hearts to beat faster. Tang Zheng was speechless for a moment. He was incomparably embarrassed. He secretly cursed. This time, even if he jumped into the Yellow River, he would not be able to wash himself clean. Before Tang Jing could finish apologizing, Mu Hongyan had already escaped from his clutches with a whoosh. She flew into the nearby bathroom. Pang! After closing the door, she hurriedly took off her clothes. Her bare chest had already become a little red. However, it was not a big problem. She hurriedly washed it with water to cool her skin and the panic and impatience in her heart. Looking at the water flowing down from her chest, she couldn't help but think of the scene where Tang Zhang's hand was placed on top of her. All these years, although many men had coveted her beauty, none of them had ever succeeded. Who would have thought that this time, Tang Zhang would be the first to take the initiative? Although it was unintentional, it still happened. How could she remain indifferent? His eyes were so fiery just now. He definitely did not think of anything good. Humph, he's young, but his heart is not small. His head is full of those things. Of course, she would not regard love as a scourge. However, all these years, all her thoughts were on her daughter. She had never thought that anything would happen between her and any man. Tang Zheng's actions just now had undoubtedly tugged at the most secret heartstrings in the depths of her heart, causing waves of ripples to surface in her heart that were difficult to calm down. Huff, huff, huff. She took a few deep breaths in succession to suppress the distracting thoughts in her heart. However, in the next second, she did not know whether to laugh or cry. She realized that she had miscalculated. Her clothes were all wet. She was naked and had no clothes to wear. How was she going to go out? She looked down at her beautiful body. She could not just rush out. Tang Zhang was in the dining room next door. He would definitely see everything clearly. Moreover, she was not that bold. The others were not up yet. If she yelled and woke them up, wouldn't it be even more embarrassing? Wouldn't what had happened between her and Tang Jing just now be made public? How was she going to face the others? The only way was to ask Tang Jing for help. Moreover, time waits for no one. If she delayed any longer and the others woke up, she would not be able to explain herself. Tang Jing. Mu Hongyan leaned against the door and called softly. Sister Mu, what's the matter? Mu Hongyan's heart was beating fast. She thought that he was really next to her. If she rushed out, she would really have no face to see anyone. Can you go to the room and get me a set of clothes? Mu Hongyan felt very lucky. Fortunately, she went to accompany Fu Yao to buy clothes last night and bought a few sets of clothes for herself. Otherwise, even if she asked Tang Jing for help, she would have no clothes to wear. That would be really embarrassing. Okay, wait a moment. Tang Jing agreed and rushed into Mu Hongyan's room. Nana was still sleeping soundly. He tiptoed and opened the wardrobe. A few sets of clothes immediately jumped into his eyes. The clothes that Mu Hongyan bought were very tasteful. Even if she did not wear them, just hanging them gave people a sense of beauty. He took a set of clothes and was about to leave when he stopped. Underwear. These two words popped up in his mind. How could she just take a jacket without underwear? Could it be that she had to leave it empty? I remember that she should have bought underwear last night. Tang Jing clearly remembered that a few women went to the underwear store. In the underwear store, he was the center of attention and attracted a lot of attention. Sure enough, after a while, he found the underwear. The black lace underwear was full of endless temptation. He could not help but imagine the scene when she wore this thin underwear. Damn! Tang Jing quickly drove away these thoughts. Otherwise, he would really have a nosebleed. Mu Hongyan's figure was very good. She was not fat nor thin. She was like a ripe peach. If she really wore this set of underwear, the temptation would definitely skyrocket. He took a few deep breaths, took out the underwear and wrapped it in his clothes and quickly returned to the bathroom. Knock knock. He gently knocked on the wooden door. Mu Hongyan was naked. She anxiously waited. Hearing the knocking sound, it was like knocking on the depths of her heart. Her heart could not help but palpitate. She took a deep breath, suppressed the emotions in her heart, and gently opened the door a crack. Even though Tang Jing couldn't see anything, but because of this crack in the door, it was as if the barrier between the two had disappeared. She had a feeling of being exposed to Tang Jing's gaze, causing her cheeks to become even redder. Tang Jing quickly handed the clothes over. She hurriedly closed the door tightly and leaned against it. She gasped for breath, her chest rising and falling. When she finally calmed down and opened the clothes, she saw the black underwear again. Her heart could not help but beat fiercely. So embarrassing. So embarrassing. She was about to collapse. Even her most intimate clothing had touched his hands. How could she be calm? But was she not going to wear it? Chapter 749. Mu Hongyan pushed open the door only to find that Tang Jing had already gone to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. She hurriedly ran into the bedroom, picked up her bag and left while casually calling out, "Tang Jing, I have something to do so I will go to the company first. Nana will stay here and play." Not eating breakfast. Tang Jing poked his head out of the kitchen only to find that Mu Hongyan had already walked out of the door and two words floated over from afar, "Not eating." Tang Jing embarrassedly smiled, knowing that the awkwardness just now must have touched her. He was too reckless to actually touch her there. But, speaking of which, it seemed to be quite big and soft. He did not continue to think about it because Empyrean Fairy and Marshall also woke up one after another to help Nana put on her clothes. After washing up and eating breakfast, Tang Jing went to school, leaving the three of them at home. Yenqing University, Tang Jing went straight to the classroom. When his three roommates came in, they were incomparably surprised but did not ask where he went. Tang Jing appeared and disappeared more and more mysteriously. Moreover, during this period of time, they were engrossed in cultivation and were extremely excited. How could they have the time to care about Tang Jing? However, the three of them looked at Tang Jing with a strange expression, as if they wanted to say something but hesitated. Finally, Wang Shiji coughed and said, "Lao Er, you say it." Zhou Yang also nodded in agreement. Tang Jing suspiciously frowned. What were the three of them doing? Why were they acting so strange? Sinosaurus's face was tangled as if he was constipated. After a long time he said, "Lao San, there is something I don't know if I should say." Tang Jing laughed and scolded, "If you have something to say then say it. If you have something to fart then fart. Why are you still acting mysterious with me? Lao San, you and Ding Dang really broke up?" Tang Jing was slightly startled and nodded. "Could it be that what you want to say is related to her?" "Yes." Sinosaurus looked as if he was facing death calmly. "She has a suitor." "Pursuer." Tang Jing felt as if his heart had been hit by a heavy hammer. He felt as if he was about to suffocate. His expression changed drastically. Seeing his reaction, several people said, "Lao San, is it really impossible for you and Ding Dang to be together? We've been together for so long. What kind of person are you? How could you lie to us?" Look at your own reaction in the mirror. How do you feel when you hear this news? You definitely know better than us. Do you dare to ask yourself, do you really not have any feelings for her? Tang Zheng was speechless. Yi Dingdang insisted on breaking up with him and refused to accept his life. Even if he had feelings for her, what could he do? This was an endless cycle with no solution. Who is chasing her? Tang Zheng asked. Although they had broken up, he still wanted Dingdang to be happy. Even if she was no longer with him, he still wanted to know the details of her pursuer. It seems to be the young master of a family. In any case, he's very awesome. Tang Zheng frowned. Since it was the young master of a large family, then it must be someone who understood Yi Dingdang's identity. If he dared to pursue her, then he must have the corresponding background. In this way, the range was greatly reduced. What's his surname? I think his surname is Song. Sinosaurus tilted his head and thought for a while. Zhou Yan nodded his head. Yes, his surname is Song, his name is Song Yu. Fang Fei and the others told us. Song Yu. Tang Zheng was shocked. If it was anyone else, his reaction would not be so big, but the key was Song Yu, so his reaction could not be big. Why did Song Yu pop out again? Back then, he was already interested in Dingdang. If not for Tang Zheng interfering, with Yi Xuanji's temper and style, the marriage between the two would have already been set. It was precisely because of Tang Zheng's interference that the marriage alliance between the Song family and the Ya family fell through. It had truly caused the Song family to lose a lot of face, especially Song Yu, who was being pointed at behind his back. But Tang Zheng never would have thought that Song Yu would come back and shamelessly chase after Yi Dingdang. If it was an ordinary pursuer, Tang Zheng might not be prepared to intervene, but this person was Song Yu, so it was a different story. Yi Dingdang could choose anyone, but he could not choose Song Yu. Tang Zheng already had a general understanding of what kind of person Song Yu was. This person's heart was not right, and he was always with people like Chu Xiaofeng. How could he be a good person? Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, Zhou Yan added, Song Yu would come to deliver flowers every afternoon after school. During this period of time, he would be very punctual. Moreover, he was very eye-catching, causing many love-struck fools to be envied. Song Yu had the looks, the money, and the status. He was indeed the best candidate for the Prince Charming in the hearts of countless love-struck fools. What was Dingdang's reaction? Tang Zheng asked. Dingdang did not react, she pretended not to see it, but Song Yu persevered, as if he would not give up until he achieved his goal. Third brother, not many girls can resist the pursuit of such a tall, rich, and handsome man. As time passes, the other party might succeed. Sinosaurus advised earnestly. Wang Shiji thought deeply and encouraged, so, when it's time to make a move, you should make a move. That's what a man is. Then he'll come today. Definitely. He's downstairs from Dingdang's dormitory. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed with a murderous glint as his killing intent surged. The few of them were shocked and hurriedly advised, Third brother, what are you doing? Are you going to kill him? You're implicating yourself in this. They were well aware of Tang Zheng's strength. As the saying goes, when a gentleman is angry, blood will splash 5 steps away. When Tang Zheng is angry, blood will splash more than 5 steps away. Tang Zheng turned a deaf ear and said, listen to the lecture in class. After saying that, he raised his head and stared at the blackboard with a serious look, but anyone with a discerning eye could tell that he was very angry and did not want anyone to get close to him. In the evening, Tang Zheng went straight to Yi Dingdang's dormitory. The 3 roommates looked at each other and quietly followed him. If Tang Zheng killed someone, they would definitely work together to stop him. In their hearts, they silently prayed that Song Yu would not come today. However, things did not go as they wished. From afar, they saw Song Yu holding a large bouquet of roses standing at the entrance of the dormitory building. The girls coming and going looked at her with envy, and some even wanted to rush up and recommend themselves. Of course, they hated themselves more for not being the girl he pursued. Tang Jing also saw it. Song Yu was holding a bouquet of flowers, looking like a jade tree facing the wind. He was indeed very charming, but in Tang Zhang's eyes, this charm was extremely annoying. Crack! He clenched his fists and his eyes seemed to be on fire. Suddenly, his pupils shrank as he saw a person walking out of the entrance, Yi Dingdang. Yi Dingdang expressionlessly walked in front of Song Yu and said, "I already said that I won't accept your flowers." Song Yu was not angry at all and said, "It's okay. Can we eat together today?" "No." Before Yi Dingdang could finish speaking, she saw Tang Jing walking over and her expression changed slightly. Song Yu sensed her strangeness and felt a strong murderous aura coming from behind her. She turned around and immediately saw Tang Jing walking over with a sullen face. However, she was not afraid at all. Instead, there was a trace of a smile in the depths of her eyes. The reason why he tried so hard to pursue Yi Dingdang was naturally because he had thought it through and not because of a sudden impulse. There were many reasons. One of them was to get back at Tang Jing for snatching Yi Dingdang from him. Now, he wanted to snatch her back and ruthlessly embarrass Tang Jing. As for whether he loved Yi Dingdang, of course not. Song Yu was a very wolfish person and even a narcissist. He never thought that he would fall in love with a woman. Perhaps he would have a good impression of her, but he had always loved himself the most. As for Yi Dingdang, he was using her more than anything. Other than annoying Tang Jing, he was also eyeing the power of the Ya family. If he really married Yi Dingdang, then the Song family and the Ya family would be more closely connected. At that time, the Song family would have a right-hand man. The Yi and Chu families would be like tigers that had grown wings. They would be able to kill the Yen family in seconds and even completely eradicate the Yen family. Song Yu was very ambitious. He was no longer satisfied with the current situation where the major families kept each other in check. That was the way the older generation did things. What he wanted was for his family to be the dominant one. The Song family would be in control of everything. No one would dare to go against the Song family. For this reason, he did not hesitate to put down his status and pursue Yi Dingdang regardless of rain or shine. He believed that he would succeed. Because Yi Xuanji had already loosened up. The Song and Yi families had begun to contact each other again. This was a good sign. In the future, as long as Yi Xuanji gave the word, Yi Dingdang's own will would not have much of an effect. Therefore, Yi Dingdang would be his sooner or later. This was fate. In the end, Yi Dingdang would not be able to escape from the palm of his hand. Of course, he knew from the beginning that he would definitely face Tang Zhang's anger. So when he saw him walking towards him, he was not afraid. "Dingdang!" Tang Jing shouted in a deep voice. Yi Dingdang turned a deaf ear. Song Yu is not a good person. He has bad intentions. You can't agree to him. Yi Dingdang's eyes flashed with a complicated gaze and said, "What right do you have to judge yourself? He's not a good person, but you're one. Dingdang, I know you're angry with me. I have nothing to say, but you can't let your emotions affect your decisions. In the end, you'll only hurt yourself." Tang Jing continued to persuade him. Yi Dingdang remained unmoved and said to Song Yu, "Didn't you give me flowers?" Song Yu understood tacitly and purposely gave Tang Jing a provocative smile, attentively offering the fresh flowers. Yi Dingdang took the flowers and leaned over to smell them. He revealed a trace of a smile. "It smells good. It's good that you like it." Song Yu said. "Tang Jing, didn't you say that you liked me before? But have you ever given me flowers?" Yi Dingdang asked. Tang Jing was silent. It was true that he had never given her flowers. Girls all like flowers, and I'm no exception. Songyu, didn't you want to invite me to dinner? Songyu cheerfully nodded, yes, I've prepared everything. Let's go. Yi Dingdang held the flowers and brushed past Tang Jing. Songyu smiled and glanced at Tang Jing. Then she walked side by side with Yi Dingdang. Many people saw this scene and pointed at it. Tang Jing was worthy of being called the most famous person on campus. This scene of him stealing someone's love was too gossipy. Moreover, the main characters were not ordinary people. It was a topic of gossip. Chapter 750. Tang Jing suddenly turned around and angrily stared at the backs of the two people. Seeing that they were about to sit in a luxurious sports car, Tang Jing's figure flashed and blocked the door. Ding Dang, you can be angry with me, but I will not watch as you walk further and further down the wrong path. Tang Jing resolutely and decisively said. As his voice fell, his hand reached out to grab Songyu. Songyu slid back and dodged his attack. Tang Jing's eyes opened wide in shock as Songyu easily dodged his attack. This did not make sense. Songyu was the young master of the Song family, so of course he was not someone who would accidentally injure his abdominal muscles. But in Tang Jing's impression, his strength was not very high. Tang Jing, you really want to make a move? Songyu's face sank as he asked. If you dare to have any ideas about Ding Dang, then I will dare to make a move against you. Tang Jing's killing intent soared. The two of them were already enemies, so why would there be any taboo? Humph, do you really think that you can run amok in Beijing and do whatever you want? We have minded our own business, but you have crossed the line, so don't blame me for being impolite. Ah, good, then I'll see how impolite you are. Ding Dang, get in the car, let's go. Songyu did not back down at all and directly opened the car door. Yi Dingdang coldly looked at Tang Jing and said, Tang Jing, this is my business, so there is no need for you to bother yourself. Moreover, I don't need you to tell me what to do in my life, so please move aside. Her cold attitude made Tang Jing speechless. Did you hear that? Move aside. Songyu reprimanded. Tang Jing angrily glared at him as his knuckles cracked. He wanted to punch Songyu's handsome face until it split open, but when he saw Yi Dingdang get into the car without looking back, his anger and strength was like a deflated balloon that disappeared into thin air. A deep sense of helplessness filled his heart. Her attitude was already so clear. Could it be that he really had to pester her? That was not his style. He really wanted to fiercely beat up Songyu, but what use would that be? The one who would lose face was Yi Dingdang. The bigger the momentum, the more people would criticize her behind her back. Songyu proudly glanced at Tang Jing and helped Yi Dingdang close the car like a gentleman. Then he got in the car and left. Only Tang Jing was left standing there like a puppet. His three roommates had been observing from the side. Their nerves were tense to the extreme. They were deeply afraid that Tang Jing would directly make a move. Seeing his dazed appearance, the three of them quickly gathered around and said, Lao San, let's go and drink. Tang Jing took a deep breath and suppressed the thousands of thoughts in his heart. He roared, drink. That night, Tang Jing was dead drunk. He had never been drunk before, but this time he wholeheartedly wanted to be drunk. If he committed a crime, he would not have to think about those things and forget about them. No wonder people like to drink after a breakup. Alcohol was indeed a good thing. The other three had risked their lives to accompany the gentleman, but they also became drunkards. The four of them supported each other, laughed loudly, sang loudly, and vented their emotions to their heart's content. It was an absurd night. Early in the morning, when Tang Jing opened his eyes, he found himself in the dormitory. The others were still lying on the bed, snoring loudly. Sinosaurus even directly laid on the floor and fell asleep, drooling all over the floor. He shook his head a few times and vaguely remembered last night's absurd indulgence. He took a deep breath and faintly said, "Those who go cannot be remonstrated, those who come can still be chased. The past is like smoke, gone with the wind." Last night's absurdity was like a farewell ceremony, bidding farewell to the past between him and Yi Ding-dang. Time flew by. Tang Jing gradually healed the scars in his heart during his studies and cultivation. Moreover, Marshall had always been meticulously taking care of him, nourishing his spirit. It was as if the breakup had caused a great change in his state of mind. In addition, he constantly asked the Empyrean fairy for guidance on cultivation. His cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. In addition, he could already control the Sumra heavens as he wished, absorbing the spiritual energy in the bronze masks. In the end, when he used up a third of the bronze masks, he successfully reached the second grade of the Jindan stage. When the spiritual energy in the bronze masks was sucked away, the terracotta was immediately smashed to pieces. Tang Jing did not feel the slightest bit of heartache. He had no use for these puppets. If they were destroyed, then so be it. Compared to the increase in his cultivation, it was insignificant. However, there was one thing that made Tang Jing feel rather regretful. The four symbols venerable had suffered too much damage and could not continue fighting. He had tried countless methods, even asking Tian Chanzi and the Empyrean fairy for guidance, but to no avail. This was not only because he had lost a powerful helper, but also because he felt that his life was not complete. Perhaps, he had unknowingly established a deep friendship with the four symbols venerable one during the battles. Although he was regretful, there was nothing he could do. He could only hope that he would find a way to remedy the situation in the future. During this period, he paid a visit to the Yen family. Yen Luyun had gifted him such a villa, so of course he had to pay a visit to express his gratitude. However, when old man Yen saw him, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Although he could not see through Tang Zhang's cultivation, the strange aura emitted from Tang Zhang's body made him believe that Tang Zhang had truly entered the Grandmaster realm. Although Yen Potion's cultivation was still higher than Tang Zhang's, he was still a few rounds older than Tang Zhang. Anyone with a discerning eye could immediately tell who was higher and who was lower. Moreover, to have such a cultivation at such a young age was truly shocking. Immediately, Yen Potian became even more convinced of his daughter's prophecy. Mu Hongyan seemed to be avoiding him on purpose. Although the two of them had met, they couldn't help but feel a little awkward. As for the Empyrean fairy, she was engrossed in teaching Nana. She did not care about the affairs of the world and fulfilled the duty of a qualified master. Lu Qingmei was still on a business trip and was unable to return to the capital for a reunion. Fang Shishir's study abroad life was also uneventful. There was no danger and everything seemed to be calm. Princess Anne, on the other hand, was surrounding Tang Jing, because that home had been repaired by her. However, Tang Jing and Wu seemed to have disappeared from the face of the earth, so what was the point of her staying alone in an empty room? However, Tang Jing had been purposely avoiding her, making it impossible for her to find him. Furthermore, she did not know that Tang Jing had already moved into a big villa and abandoned that small house. His life seemed peaceful, but Tang Zhang's heart was always thinking about the Azure Dragon Palace. If he did not understand the Azure Dragon Palace, his heart would always be anxious. Seeing that his cultivation had stabilized, he decided to set off for the martial sect. Empyrean Fairy was not interested in this at all, so she stayed at home to teach Nana. As a result, only Wu and Tian Chanzi traveled together, but there were many dangers on this trip. Tang Jing brought Xiaobai along, and when he brought Xiaobai back from the Imperial Palace, Empyrean Fairy was shocked once again. However, in the end, she was unable to tell Xiaobai's origins, but she was certain that Xiaobai was definitely not an ordinary demonic beast. Tang Zhang had long since stopped fantasizing about Xiaobai's origins. Even the 100 Transformation Star Lord and the 5-clawed Golden Dragon were unable to figure out Xiao Bai's origins, so how many other people had the ability to do so? It seemed that this could only be an unsolvable mystery. The group of 3 people and 1 beast left the capital once again, but this time they took a plane and headed straight for Jiangnan. The headquarters of the martial organization was in Jiangnan, a river town, which was something that Tang Jing never expected. Jiangnan had always been a rich and populous place, and the population was not small. Was the martial organization not afraid of being exposed by choosing this place? After getting off the plane and looking at the scenery that was completely different from the capital, they couldn't help but feel relaxed and happy. The 3 of them were not in a hurry to travel. They found a hotel to rest for the night and recuperated. Then, they rented a car and drove towards their destination. The car left the big city and arrived at a small mountain path. The beautiful scenery of Jiangnan's water town greeted them. After a long journey of 1 day and 1 night, the few of them arrived in front of a mountain range. There was no road in front of them, so they could only abandon the car and walk on foot. For the 3 of them, walking on the steep mountain road was like walking on flat ground. They could only hear the sound of the wind brushing past them. Wu walked at the front. Suddenly, she stopped and looked up warily. "What's wrong?" Tang Jing asked. "There's an ambush ahead." Tian Chanzi also nodded. "Indeed, but there aren't many people, so it shouldn't be a problem." Whiz! With that, he turned into an afterimage and disappeared. Not long later, he walked back with 2 people in his hands and casually threw them at Wu's feet. Wu's expression was complicated. These people were originally from the same sect as her, but now they had become enemies. "Are the great clan elder and second clan elder in the martial sect?" Wu asked. The 2 captives did not even understand the situation before they lost the ability to resist. When they saw Wu, their expressions changed and they exclaimed, "Wu, it's you. You actually brought outsiders to the martial sect, you traitor." Wu coldly snorted and said, "I am no longer a member of the martial sect, so how can I be a traitor? Moreover, you have betrayed the sect master and colluded with the elders. You are the real traitors, betraying the sect master. We are following the old sect master's wishes, not traitors." The 2 of them flatly denied. Wu was too lazy to talk nonsense with them and asked, "Are the 2 elders in the martial sect?" "Of course." "Humph, do you still want to find the elders? You are courting death." The 2 of them disdainfully said. Wu's 2 hand blades chopped at each other's necks, and the 2 of them directly fell limply and fainted. Continue forward. The martial sect has a sentry every 3 steps and a sentry every 5 steps. The defense is very tight. We can only force our way in. Wu said worriedly. Tian Chanzi did not mind and laughed. "This level of defense is only a threat to ordinary people. To us, it is nothing to be afraid of." Whiz! Just as he finished speaking, the sound of something tearing through the air came from afar. It was as if something had pierced through the air and turned into an ear-piercing whistle as it flew over. The 3 of them raised their heads and saw a huge arrow shooting over. This arrow was 3 meters long and looked like a long hair. The arrow shone with a cold light and released a strong killing intent. The whistling sound did not stop. Instead, it became more and more frequent. In the distant forest, densely packed long arrows shot out, almost the same as this arrow. This is an arrow formation. It is even more powerful than a bullet. Be careful. Wu shouted. The arrow formation was actually set up here and moved forward a few thousand meters. Chapter 751. Arrow Formation. Tian Chanzi curled his lips in disdain. "Let me see how powerful it is." His finger pointed forward, coincidentally hitting the arrowhead of the flying arrow. The arrow's attack came to an abrupt stop, and then it quickly cracked at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, it turned into wood shavings, and the arrowhead melted, turning into a pool of molten iron. However, the arrows behind him also shot over. Tang Jing turned into a shadow and went up to meet them. The war soul sword slashed down, and the sword light soared into the sky. Boom! The violent sword chi with an unstoppable force caused the flying arrows to collapse, and all the flying arrows fell to the ground with a crackling sound. Seeing this scene, Marshall's eyelids twitched. Although she already knew that Tang Zheng's cultivation had improved by a lot, she never thought that he would be so powerful. Tian Chanzi nodded his head in satisfaction. Not bad. Have you experienced the mysteries of the Aura's core stage? Tang Jing nodded his head in joy. After this attack, the true qi in his body continued to flow endlessly, giving him a feeling that his true qi was inexhaustible. He believed that even if there were a few more waves of arrows, he would be able to easily resolve them. As if to make his wish come true, an even more mournful howl came from the depths of the forest, like rolling thunder. Tang Zheng took a deep breath. Holding the war soul sword with both hands, he roared loudly, his voice shaking the surroundings. Puff! The sword chi turned into a gust of wind and blew out. Kacha, kacha, kacha. A series of ear-piercing breaking sounds resounded through the clouds. Not only were the flying arrows broken into two, even the forest seemed to have been struck by a typhoon, breaking apart and even uprooting itself. Marshall could not help but open her mouth wide and exclaim, "Is the Aura's core stage so powerful?" Although she had seen the strength of the Grandmaster stage since she was young, seeing the power of Tang Zheng's move with her own eyes still made her heart surge. Tang Zheng was a little proud. This was the first time he had used his strength after breaking through to the Aura's core stage, and the power was a little beyond his expectations. His heart was in turmoil. He thought to himself that although the Jindan stage and the Anidia stage were only one stage apart, the difference in their strength was like heaven and earth. As if seeing through his thoughts, Tian Chanzi explained, once the gold core is formed, the comprehensive strength of the practitioner will have a qualitative leap, just like the Xiantian realm and the Grandmaster realm of warriors. Only by condensing a golden core can one be considered to have truly stepped onto the path of cultivation and peek into the mysteries of the path of cultivation. Marshall's eyes could not help but reveal a look of envy, but more than that, she was happy for him. The stronger her beloved was, the more honor she would feel. However, there was also a trace of disappointment in the depths of her heart. The gap between her and Tang Jing was getting bigger and bigger, which made her feel an inexplicable strong pressure. It seems that the arrow formation has been destroyed by you, Tian Chanzi said as he looked into the distance. Marshall added, there are traps at every step in the Marshall organization, and it is hard to guard against them. Since they have already been alerted, the front will definitely be more dangerous, so it is better to be careful. Tang Jing took the lead and said, even if it is a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, we still have to charge through. Since we have already been exposed, we might as well cut the Gordian knot and rush through. The three of them hit it off. Their figures flashed, and in an instant, they rushed through the forest. Along the way, they could clearly see the power of Tang Zheng's sword. The trees were broken, and it was a complete mess. There were even corpses of martial organization disciples lying on the ground. It was clear that not only did the sword break the arrow formation, it even killed the enemy who was lying in ambush. After passing through the arrow formation, the three of them moved forward as fast as lightning. Suddenly, they stepped on empty air. Tang Jing was shocked. Like a white crane spreading its wings, he soared into the sky. Tian Chanzi directly floated in the air. As for Marshall, she flew forward with the tip of her foot, but the place she landed on was still empty. Below, a cold light flashed, and it was unknown how dangerous it was. Be careful. Tang Jing shouted, and hurriedly grabbed Marshall into his embrace, and the two of them quickly fell down. War Soul Sword. Tang Jing roared, the War Soul Sword was unsheathed and floated in the air. Tang Zheng stood on top of the war soul sword, turned into a ray of light, and directly passed through the trap. Not only could the imperial sword technique kill enemies, it could also save lives at critical moments. Tian Chanzi was as light as the wind. His feet did not touch the ground, and he easily crossed over. Looking back, the trap was as big as a few main courts. There was no place to borrow strength from, and it was a gap that even pre-celestial stage martial artists could not cross. Marshall snuggled in Tang Zheng's embrace, her heart filled with fear. If she had charged in alone, she would have lost her life. These traps were far more dangerous than before. It was obvious that the elders had deliberately guarded against their attacks. The martial organization is there. Marshall reluctantly left Tang Zheng's embrace, and pointed to the mountain peak not far away. This is truly a treasured land. Tian Chanzi said, it's much better than the place where the witch clan lives now. If we occupy this place, we can use it as the witch clan's residence. Tang Zheng's heart moved. This was indeed a method. The existence of the witch clan was no longer a secret. Moreover, his relationship with the authorities was also in the honeymoon period. If he gathered the witch clan here, they would be able to help him even more than if they were abroad. However, this thought flashed through his mind and he rejected it. Although the officials' attitude towards cultivators was very magnanimous, it was impossible to predict what would happen in the future. In order to not be surrounded by a heavy army in the future, he still couldn't set up this kind of settlement in the country. However, this sentence reminded Tang Zheng that since the martial sect and the rest had already settled down on the island, wouldn't the witch clan be able to do the same? Islands were different from continents. They could drift anywhere and it was difficult to completely surround them. Even if there were any unforeseen events in the future, they could still ensure their survival. This was even more reliable than letting the witch clan stay abroad. What are you thinking about? Marshall sensed his abnormality and asked. Tang Zheng regained his senses and shook his head slightly. Looking at the towering mountain, he said, we will definitely have to fight in close quarters. You must be careful. Although we used to be from the same sect, we are now life and death enemies. We cannot be soft-hearted. Marshall's expression was resolute as he said, from the moment they betrayed the sect master, they were no longer my fellow sect members, but my enemies. The three of them climbed the mountain, and rustling sounds immediately came from the forest. They came from all directions, and one figure after another flashed like ghosts, making it extremely difficult to catch them. An earth-shattering killing intent assaulted their faces, causing them to be unable to breathe properly. All of you, show yourselves. Tian Chanzi roared, and with a slash of his hand, an endless amount of sword chi appeared, and the forest in front of him was cut in half. Blood splattered everywhere, and the ghost-like figure finally appeared. More than 30 people crowded the forest in front of them. All of them were brimming with killing intent and their faces were filled with ruthlessness. Kill! The crowd let out an earth-shaking roar and charged forward wave after wave. Let's see whose gains are greater. Tian Chanzi laughed coldly, and rushed into the crowd like a whirlwind. His finger pointed at each of their foreheads, and bloody holes appeared one after another, instantly killing them. Tang Zheng's war soul sword light shone brightly. Wherever the sword light passed, there would be casualties, and its lethality was astonishing. Marshall's cultivation was slightly higher than these people, but he did not have an absolute advantage. Clenching his teeth, he used the fire nether divine palm, branding many of them with palm prints. Not long later, none of the 30 or so enemies were still standing. Some of them fell to the ground and wailed miserably, while others directly reported to King Yama. Tian Chanzi glanced at Tang Zheng complacently, and said, "You still need to practice more." This time, Tian Chanzi killed even more enemies. Of course, this was only natural and not surprising. The three of them climbed up another mountain path, and a person rushed out from the forest, blocking in front of them. Second Elder. Marshall cried out in alarm. Marshall, you traitor, you dare to lead outsiders to attack the Marshall sect. I should have killed you back then. The second elder looked down from above and shouted arrogantly. Marshall was not afraid at all, and retorted, Second elder, you are the traitor of the Marshall sect, betraying the sect master. How can Wu Junshan represent the Marshall sect? The current Marshall sect is the purest Marshall sect, and we have eliminated you traitors. Since you didn't hide, and instead came to die, then I will fulfill your wish. The second elder was arrogant and used to being high and mighty. He did not put them in his eyes at all. Just as he finished speaking, he rushed down, the large blade in his hand emitting a cold light and killing intent. If you want to hurt Marshall, you have to pass through me first. Tang Zheng leaped forward, and with a move of heaven flying immortal, in that moment, it was as if there was only this sword left in this world, and the war soul sword firmly locked onto the second elder. The second elder's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly used his blade to block. Ka-cha! The large blade was cut into two, and the war soul sword slashed down from above. After cutting the large blade, its attack did not decrease. Puff! Blood splattered, and a line of blood extended from the top of the second elder's head to his crotch. Tang Zheng did not even look, and directly kept the war soul sword, and walked past the second elder. Bang! Bang! The second elder was cut into two halves, and fell to the ground. He died with his eyes wide open, and his eyes were still filled with disbelief. Tian Chanzi's eyes lit up, and praised, Good boy, you have already completely comprehended the essence of the heaven-flying immortal sword technique. This heaven-flying immortal is overbearing, but it does not lose its nimbleness and elegance. Although the second elder is also in the great scholar realm, he underestimated his opponent too much, and in the end, he was not your match. Marshall was dumbstruck, as if he had turned into a puppet, and said blankly, The second elder died just like that, and he couldn't even withstand a single move from Tang Zheng. Little girl, now you know how powerful cultivators are. The further you go, the greater the gap between cultivators and martial artists. Cultivators have too many abilities, and are not something that martial artists can compare to. Tian Chanzi said proudly. However, it is not easy for a martial artist to become a cultivator. Unless they cripple their entire life's cultivation, it would be wishful thinking. Cripple my entire life's cultivation. Martial heartstrings trembled, and quickly shook his head, then I'll just be a martial artist. This is the right choice. Not everyone can be as abnormal as Tang Zheng. His cultivation has advanced by leaps and bounds, and he doesn't seem like a human anymore. Turning into a cultivator halfway, often the final strength is not as good as continuing to persevere on the path of a martial artist. Chapter 752. The three of them directly killed their way to the peak of the mountain. There was only one person standing in front of the huge plaza, the others were all lying on the ground, corpses littered the ground and blood flowed like a river. The three of them looked at the scene in shock. Could it be that there were others who came up the mountain and beat them to it? They looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what was going on. But without a doubt, their sharp gazes immediately locked onto the person who was still standing, the great clan elder. He held a sword in his hand that was covered in blood, even his body was covered in blood. His expression was resolute as he stood proudly, coldly looking at the three of them and the beast, and mechanically said, You're finally here. Tang Zheng's eyelids twitched. This was too strange, there must be a demon behind this. Great clan elder, who killed these people? Marshall's expression kept changing, he could not help but step forward and ask. The great clan elder grinned, his smile was sinister and sinister, he raised the treasure sword in his hand and lightly spat out 3 words, I killed them. You killed them. The three of them turned pale with fright, these people were the other party's subordinates, he killed them all just like that. Wasn't this too ruthless? Marshall immediately asked, You're too ruthless, why did you kill them? The great clan elder said indifferently, only the dead can keep a secret. What secret? The secret you want to know. The great clan elder said directly, although they might not know too many secrets, there will always be one or two people who know a little bit, so killing them all is the safest way. Hiss. Everyone felt a chill run from their backs to their heads. Too ruthless. They are your subordinates, how can you bear to do this? Tang Zheng could not believe it, if it was him, he would definitely not be so ruthless. Dying in my hands is a worthy death, why can't I bear it? The great clan elder retorted. Tian Chanzi had been silent the entire time, and finally could not help but ask, you know why we are here? The great clan elder revealed a mocking smile, of course, you want to know about the High Lord, but you won't get what you want. Everyone is dead, and no one knows anymore. Really? Tian Chanzi sneered disapprovingly. You're more useful than the others. Tang Zheng suddenly had an idea. He didn't need the other party to confess. As long as he used the soul-searching technique, all secrets would be revealed. Can you catch me? The great elder smiled confidently. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi's hearts skipped a beat at the same time. They had an ominous premonition. With a flash of their silhouettes, they rushed towards the great elder. They were determined to capture him alive. The great elder did not move, but his eyes were filled with determination. He laughed wildly without any fear, ha ha ha, you bunch of cultivators, the Lord will avenge me. Your doomsday will come soon. His laughter was wild, shaking the woods and the surrounding mountains and fields. Just as Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi were about to grab hold of his arms, a loud bang suddenly rang out from within the great elder's body. A powerful energy mixed with flesh and blood flew towards the two of them. The great elder exploded. He knew that he was going to die. After killing all of his subordinates, he didn't hesitate to use his internal energy to attack his meridians and self-destruct. He didn't want to fall into Tang Zheng's hands. Looking at the flesh and blood all over the sky, Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi couldn't help but retreat. Their faces didn't look good. They came here full of confidence. Even the attack they encountered before didn't affect their confidence at all. They thought that this trip would definitely be fruitful. However, it was all wishful thinking on their part. The great elder's actions gave them a vivid lesson. Things were far more complicated than they had imagined. The mastermind behind the scenes, the Azure Dragon Palace and the Lord, was not easy to find out. The Lord didn't hesitate to give up such a powerful chess piece. He didn't even do anything to resist and chose to commit suicide. His ruthless nature and his control over his subordinates were truly chilling. Just what kind of divine being is this High Lord, to actually have such charm and control? Tang Zheng subconsciously muttered to himself. Tian Chanzi also didn't say a word. The mission this time was far more complicated and difficult than he had imagined. He had misjudged the situation, causing all the clues to come to an abrupt end. Wu's face was pale, her lips trembling. She stared blankly at the corpses on the ground. Among them, there were even familiar faces. But all of this ended in the hands of the great elder. In order to protect the so-called secret, Wu was angry. Did they need to sacrifice the lives of hundreds of people to protect a secret? The price was too great, too cruel. She grew up in the martial organization. Her feelings for the martial organization were far from what ordinary people could compare to. Even if she left the martial organization, she still had deep feelings for this mountain and these courtyards. But now, all of this beauty was like a mirror that was smashed into pieces. The martial organization had been destroyed. Her heart was empty. We must find the Azure Dragon Palace and that lord. Wu angrily roared. Tang Zheng had an idea and said, let's go to the Li Palace. Of course, Wu did not give in and said, I will lead the way. Grandma Li will definitely know more about the inside story than the great elder. Tian Chanzi's originally dejected eyes once again glowed with spirit, and warned, this time, we will go straight to the target. The Li Palace's palace master, Grandma Li, definitely cannot give her the chance to commit suicide like the great elder. Tang Jing deeply agreed and nodded his head heavily. Looking at the desolate land, Wu faintly said, bury them. After all, they are from the same sect. Tang Jing did not object. With a slash of his sword, a huge deep hole appeared at the side of the plaza. After the burial, Marshall stared at the building in front of him in a daze and said, can you accompany me in for a walk? Of course, Tang Jing would agree and accompany her into the Marshall organization. The Marshall organization's buildings were ancient and full of history. There were pavilions and pavilions with carved beams and painted rafters. If it weren't for that accident, you would have grown up here. Wu said. Tang Jing was shocked. That's right, he had brushed shoulders with the Marshall organization and grew up in Ordinary Balance's dilapidated little house. He had no fate with these ancient buildings. He vaguely had an illusion. If he were to do it again, would he really grow up here like she said? He would definitely practice martial arts from a young age, have the love of his parents, and even have the help of his fellow disciples. But he immediately shook his head. History could not be reversed. His unique experience had made him who he was today. He did not regret his experience, nor did he regret growing up in that dilapidated little house with his grandfather, often worrying about making a living. These bits and pieces formed his unique life. It was something that the Marshall organization and these exquisite buildings could not give. Wu stopped in her tracks and pointed to a training field in front of her and said, since I can remember, I have spent most of my time in this training field, cultivating with my fellow disciples. Now that I think about it, although those days were hard, they were even more simple and happy. Now that she had grown up, she faced all kinds of unexpected situations. There was pain, happiness, and conflict. Of course, it was not as simple and happy as before. Wu would occasionally say a few words. Tang Jing felt as if he had experienced her life, or rather, Wu had experienced his life in the Marshall organization for him. After visiting all the buildings, the two of them returned to the plaza and stared deeply at the Marshall organization. Wu said, in the future, I will not return here. Master and mistress will definitely not. Since the Marshall organization no longer exists, then let everything disappear. Tang Jing did not understand what she meant. She had already lit a paper window, and the flames immediately jumped up. The wooden building ignited upon contact with the fire. In an instant, the huge Marshall organization was engulfed in flames, turning into a sea of fire. Wu took a deep breath, restrained all her emotions, and said, let's go. The three of them floated away. In the sea of fire, the magnificent Marshall organization collapsed. The glory of the past became history, never to return. 3 days later, the three of them and the beast came to another valley, 100 Flowers Valley. The Li Palace was hidden in the 100 Flowers Valley. The so-called 100 Flowers, as the name implied, meant that there were many fresh flowers in the valley. However, this also implied that the disciples of the 100 Flowers Valley were all women, and there were no men. As soon as they entered the valley, the refreshing fragrance of the flowers drifted over. It was not strong, but it was very pleasant to smell, causing people to involuntarily become intoxicated. From afar, one could see that the sides of the valley were filled with flowers, as if they were in a sea of flowers. Wu took the lead and led the way. Her brows were tightly knitted, as if they were two sharp swords. Her nerves were also tense, and she was on full alert. The Li Palace was the same as the Marshall organization. It was not a safe place. It was definitely extremely dangerous, so it was best to be careful. The valley was very deep, as if there was no end. The fragrance of the flowers lingered at the tip of his nose, lingering. Stop! Suddenly, Tian Chanzi shouted, looking ahead with a serious expression. Tang Zhang and Marshall stopped at the same time, looking suspiciously at Tian Chanzi. What's wrong? Tian Chanzi said in a deep voice, there's something strange, don't you think this road is too long? Tang Zhang looked at Marshall. Marshall seemed to be deep in thought, and muttered to himself, in the past, when I came here, I had a disciple of the Li Palace leading the way, so I did not pay special attention to the length of this valley. However, there is one thing that can be confirmed, this valley is not short. Don't you think the surroundings are very familiar? It seems like we passed by just now. Tian Chanzi looked around and said. The two of them hurriedly looked up. Just now, they did not pay too much attention to the environment, and were all focused on the possible dangers. The two of them shook their heads at the same time. Tian Chanzi was helpless, and sighed, let's continue walking. In any case, there's something strange about this valley, just pay attention. The three of them continued forward. After a while, a series of bell-like laughter came from the front. They were overjoyed. It seemed that they had reached the end, so they quickened their pace and rushed out of the valley. The scene in front of them suddenly opened up. A lake as clear as a mirror appeared in front of them. The bell-like laughter came from the lake. The three of them looked at the scene in the lake and couldn't help but freeze. Chapter 753. Tang Zhang and Tian Chanzi's eyes stared straight. It was not because they were greedy for beauty, but because they did not expect to encounter such a scene. Marshall's face immediately flushed red as she angrily said, turn around, what are you guys peeping at people bathing for? Tang Zhang and Tian Chanzi were forced to helplessly turn their heads. Tang Zhang saw Tian Chanzi winking at him and could not help but be speechless. What do we do now? Tian Chanzi said without hesitation, these people are definitely disciples of Li Palace. They are enemies. Let's rush over and subdue them. Marshall immediately objected, how can that be? No matter what, they are still girls. How can they be seen by you two men? After she finished speaking, she glared at Tang Zhang, as if she was afraid that he would peek. Tang Zhang smiled embarrassedly and said, are we just going to wait here? So what if we wait a bit? In any case, they won't continue to bathe. Tang Zhang shrugged and said, in any case, we are not in a hurry. Let's just wait. They had previously imagined that they would encounter all kinds of traps and killing moves, but they did not expect to encounter a group of beauties playing in the water. Tian Chanzi regretfully sighed and muttered, in broad daylight, Li Palace's people are not afraid of being peeked at. Marshall said, Li Palace's people are all women. Moreover, Li Palace's terrain is dangerous. There are no ordinary people who enter the valley, so they are not afraid of being peeked at. Li Palace's disciples are really bold and unrestrained. Tang Zhang recalled the charming scene and could not help but sigh. Once again, he received a supercilious look from Marshall. He could not help but think of Li Xiaotian. He did not know if she was in Li Palace. If they met later, he was afraid that they would have to fight. The trip to the island nation had almost exhausted all of his patience with Li Xiaotian. If she did not join his camp in the end, he was afraid that he would not have let her go. As for the Li Palace master behind her, Granny Li, although Tang Zhang had never seen her with his own eyes, his hatred for her was definitely not small. If it weren't for him, Wu Junshan, Lan Yu, and the others wouldn't have suffered so much and almost lost their lives. Granny Li colluded with the island nation and sent her own people into the tiger's mouth. Tang Zhang would never forget this enmity. If he could take revenge this time, then he would definitely not be soft-hearted. Why aren't they done yet? This bath is still not over yet. The bell-like laughter still floated in the wind, and the heaven monk muttered in dissatisfaction. Tang Zhang also frowned. If they kept waiting, they would be discovered sooner or later. It was better to just rush in. Marshall stared at the alluring mermaids in the lake and said, they are playing in the water. I'm afraid we'll have to wait a little longer. I can't wait. Tian Chanzi blew his eyebrows and glared, and immediately turned around. Marshall was anxious, but how could she do anything to Tian Chanzi? She could only watch as he strode out of the valley. Seeing that, Tang Jing also turned his head. Since he was about to be exposed, he might as well cut the Gordian knot and get rid of all these people. Marshall glared at Tang Jing, stomped his feet hatefully, and walked out of the valley side by side. When the women in the lake heard the commotion, they all turned their heads. However, they did not charge over with their swords. Instead, they came out of the water and walked ashore with large strides. He was stark naked, without a single piece of clothing on him. Every part of their body could be seen clearly, causing one's blood to boil. Moreover, it wasn't just one, but a group. If one's willpower was weaker, they would probably have a nosebleed. This scene was too exciting, and even Tang Zhang's heartbeat couldn't help but speed up a bit. You're not allowed to look. Marshall scolded sourly. Tang Zhang said seriously, they are enemies. If you don't look at them, what if you fall into their trap? Don't let your imagination run wild, use all your strength to face the enemy. Seeing Tang Zhang's righteous words, Marshall had no choice but to give up. The group of beauties had all come ashore. They walked towards the few of them with smiles on their faces. They did not have the slightest hint of hostility. Tang Jing muttered in his heart. Could it be that the Li Palace had the tradition of welcoming guests naked? He had never heard of it. Didn't they say that the Li Palace did not allow men to enter? Seeing him and Tian Chanzi, these women should be very angry, wishing that they could get rid of them as soon as possible. Could it be a smiling tiger, a knife hidden in a smile, a needle hidden in cotton? But the smiles on these people's faces were too sincere, and they all exuded a sense of charm, causing the evil fire in one's heart to uncontrollably stir. Her eyebrows were like black, her eyes were like water, and her eyes were like autumn waves. It was as if she could speak and seduce people. The beauties were divided into two groups. One group directly surrounded Tian Chanzi, but they did not use any killing moves. Instead, they were like alluring spirits that directly wrapped around Tian Chanzi's body. Damn! Could this be a honey trap? The price is too high. Tang Jing stared with his eyes wide open, feeling that it was inconceivable. But in an instant, his body froze, because a few beauties also surrounded him, directly pushing Marshall to the side, causing her to almost go crazy. Tang Zhang was directly surrounded by a few naked bodies. The other party was not honest at all. They did not give him a chance to breathe at all as they tightly wrapped him up. Their white skin and towering breasts were tightly pressed against him, and their cherry mouths were exhaling beside his ears. Even an immortal would find it difficult to be reserved, let alone a young man in his 20s who was full of fire. Tang Zhang's heart thumped fiercely. He thought to himself, if this is a honey trap, then this is too much. Or could it be that the Li Palace was filled with a group of women who were dissatisfied with their desires, and when they saw a man, they would throw themselves at him without a care for their own safety? His face and ears flushed red, and his breathing involuntarily quickened. The power of this group of women was too great. All kinds of touching and teasing, as tempting as they could, made it so that no one had the chance to breathe or resist. If an ordinary man were to face this kind of situation, he would have long since surrendered. But Tang Zhang's mind had always maintained a bit of clarity. This was his bottom line. Although he had a lot of emotional debt, he would not have any relationship with these women that he did not know. Marshall's eyes were about to spit fire. She stomped her feet hatefully and directly pulled a woman off Tang Zhang's body. She angrily scolded, "You shameless women, get lost." But Tang Zhang was like a delicious cake, too attractive. Every time Marshall pulled a woman away, the other women would pounce on her. This repeated until Tang Zhang's body was always hung with naked women. Marshall did not use any killing moves because, as a woman, she had always maintained a compassionate heart. Hoo. Marshall gasped for breath, gritted her teeth and said, "If you don't stop, don't blame me for being impolite." As she spoke, she was about to get serious. But those women completely ignored her, as if they were not afraid of her killing move at all. In their eyes, there was only Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was in the center of the vortex. The evil fire in his heart gradually surged, and even the pure yang energy was beginning to stir. He was suddenly shocked. This was the Li Palace, how could there be such a good thing? A group of beauties took the initiative to offer themselves. Moreover, as far as he knew, Li Xiaotian was a person who had cultivated charm techniques. In other words, the Li Palace had a special charm technique. Could it be that these were charm techniques, trapping them step by step and capturing them as easily as blowing off dust? Hiss. Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air. His heart trembled, and all the evil fire was suppressed. His mind became clear. Since he was sure that all of this was a trap, he would not show mercy to the fairer sex. Circulating his power, he roared, "Get out of my way." Another roar exploded at the same time. It turned out to be Tian Chanzi. He directly grabbed a woman's head and twisted it forcefully. Boom! The woman disappeared, as if she had turned into a cloud of dust that drifted with the wind. There was not a single drop of blood. Tang Zheng suddenly quivered as he came to a realization. Illusion. All of this was an illusion. Otherwise, a woman's head would be twisted, but there was not a single drop of blood. Instead, it turned into air, as if she had never appeared. Although this scene had happened, the other women acted as if they did not see it at all. They continued to charge at the two of them without a care for their own safety. Tang Zheng secretly sighed. This was definitely an illusion. These were not real women, but illusions that could be created, causing them to fall deep into it and be unable to extricate themselves. As expected, the Li Palace did not have a good impression of men. This trick was specifically used to deal with men. Marshall was a woman, so she was naturally immune. He did not know what would happen if he really fell into it, but there was no doubt that it would not be a good result. However, he also had some doubts. Was his willpower so weak? That restless evil fire just now did not seem to be his normal reaction at all. There was also Tian Chanzi. Although he often spoke without thinking, and also encouraged Tang Zheng to pick up girls, he was definitely not casual with women. Back when he was hanging around the bar, who knew how many women had thrown olive branches at him? Among them, there was no lack of real beauties, but he was indifferent. How could he be moved by these beauties that he had never met before? All of this was full of strangeness. This is an illusion. Tian Chanzi did not show any mercy. In a few moves, he killed all the women in front of him, as if they had never appeared. Tang Zheng was shocked. He and Tian Chanzi were both people who had trained in illusion techniques, but they were not able to see through it in an instant. From this, it could be seen how great the other party's ability to use illusion techniques was. But wasn't there no cultivators in the Li Palace? How could there be someone who could use illusion techniques? Tang Zheng's head was as big as two. He really could not figure out the reason. Of course, he did not show any mercy. One by one, huge fists greeted the women wrapped around his body. Wu Yi finally knew what was going on. The anger that he had accumulated just now suddenly erupted like a volcano, crazily attacking these women. Bang bang bang. In an instant, all the women disappeared like smoke in thin air. However, before they could heave a sigh of relief, a bell-like laughter came from the lake again. They saw that one by one, naked beauties walked out from the lake. Damn, it's not over yet. Tang Zheng speechlessly scolded. Chapter 754. The cultivators were also blinded by the illusions of a group of martial artists. In the beginning, they were not aware of it and almost fell into the trap. This was truly inconceivable. Tian Chanzi and Tang Zhang's expressions were not good. Without any leniency, with a few bangs, the group of beautiful women turned into cannon fodder. But the water rippled and another wave came. The two of them simply ignored it. Instead, they looked around and prepared to find the mystery of this illusion so that they could break it. Suddenly, Tang Jing took a deep breath, the tip of his nose twitched, and said, "The fragrance of the flowers in this valley is too long, it has been lingering around the tip of my nose." Tian Chanzi's eyes lit up, and slapped his thigh. "We all overlooked a problem, the fragrance of the flowers. I was wondering why I was unable to control my body's feelings. So it was because of the fragrance of the flowers. The fragrance of the flowers has an aphrodisiac effect." Tang Zheng suddenly looked at the two sides of the valley, the flowers that covered the mountains and plains, and was shocked. "What kind of flowers are these?" Tian Chanzi shook his head. "I don't know, but the problem most likely lies with these flowers. I'm afraid these illusions were also caused by these words. I was wondering why Li Palace was a martial artist, how could they use illusions? Furthermore, it was such a large-scale illusion, to fool experts like you and me. You're saying that this is not an illusion, but the effect of the flowers is almost equal to..." Tian Chanzi nodded his head. "Yes, get rid of these flowers, and the illusion will naturally disappear." Tian Chanzi waved his hand forward, and a violent sword chi whistled out like a tornado. Boom! The blood that covered the mountains and plains was immediately stirred into pieces. The petals floated in the air, and the fragrance became even stronger. Kakik! More and more laughter. Marshall suddenly pointed at the lake and said, "Look, there are more people." It was indeed so. More and more naked beauties walked out of the lake, their smiles were even more charming, and their voices were even more alluring. The fragrance of the flowers, although you cut the flowers, the petals floated in the air. The fragrance of the flowers is even stronger, and the power of the illusion is even stronger. Tang Zheng immediately saw through the mystery. Tian Chanzi's face was gloomy. This was really unexpected. Tang Zheng suddenly had an idea. He patted Xiao Bai on his shoulder and said, "Xiao Bai, breathe fire." Xiao Bai squeaked excitedly, unable to hold back any longer. A ball of flame spurted out from its small mouth, and in an instant, the entire mountain turned into a sea of fire. The flowers turned into ashes, and the fragrance of the flowers turned into a burnt smell. The three of them raised their heads to look again. The beauties in the lake disappeared one by one. In the end, they all disappeared without a trace. All that was left was a huge and quiet lake. "This lake isn't an illusion, right?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. Wu shook his head. "I came to Li Palace before, this lake is real." Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. "That's good. The illusion has disappeared. Let's continue forward. It seems like Li Palace is even more sinister. Their traps are not as crude and direct as the martial organization." Tian Chanzi's killing intent soared. The matter just now caused him to lose a lot of face and completely ignited the anger in his heart. In a while, the people of Li Palace would definitely suffer and pay the price. The three of them went around the lake and passed by it. The scene in front of them appeared once again. It was beautiful and magnificent, like a paradise on earth. This group of women really know how to enjoy themselves. They found such a beautiful place. Tang Jing praised. This was the place chosen by the first palace master of Li Palace. From then on, it has never been changed. Wu Jishao said. "How far is the main character?" Tian Chanzi asked in a deep voice. Wu raised his head and looked into the distance. "It's not far ahead." They couldn't help but quicken their pace. Suddenly, they all stopped at the same time. Their faces revealed astonishment as they stared into the distance. Black smoke. Billowing black smoke came from afar, completely destroying the beautiful environment. The three of them were flabbergasted. How could Li Palace catch fire? Let's go and take a look. Tang Zheng suddenly had a bad premonition. With a gust of wind under his feet, he arrived in front of the black smoke in the blink of an eye. He saw a huge group of buildings surrounded by flames and billowing smoke. Who started this fire? The three of them immediately had this question in their minds as they looked at each other in dismay. Suddenly, Tang Zheng had an idea and discovered a clue. There's no one here. There's no one here. Wu also came to a realization. That's right, there's no one here. The last time I came, there were many people from Li Palace. This time, there's no one here. It's too strange. Heaven Monk's face darkened as he looked at the sea of fire, and said, they must have known that we were coming, so they left the building empty. They didn't even hesitate to burn down their base camp, and didn't leave us any clues. What a decisive mind. Tang Zheng and Wu heard this and their faces turned ugly. This operation was a failure. Every step of the way was taken by the enemy. The great clan elder did not hesitate to kill all the disciples to keep the secret. Granny Li burned down Li Palace and still did not leave them any clues. Without a doubt, all of this was to protect the Azure Dragon Hall and the High Lord who had always been hiding in the darkness. What kind of power did the High Lord have to make the martial organization and Li Palace so dead set on it, not hesitating to sacrifice so much? What do we do now? Wu asked helplessly. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi looked at each other and were about to speak when suddenly, the earth shook as if there was an earthquake. Flames rose from all directions and huge rocks soared into the sky, causing them to be unable to stand steadily. Explosion. There are explosives buried underground. Tang Zheng shouted in shock. Quickly leave this place. Boom, boom, boom. The explosions grew louder and louder, coming from all directions. The ground beneath their feet cracked open and a huge shockwave struck them. Tang Zheng grabbed Wu's hand and shouted, let's go. He used the earth-shrinking technique and rushed towards the entrance of the valley. Tian Chanzi also rushed out with a gust of wind under his feet. The earth cracked open and a huge explosive force came from beneath their feet, causing them to have no place to stand. They were on the verge of collapse, as if they could fall into the bottomless abyss at any time and be swallowed by the huge explosive force. Imperial Sword Technique. Tian Chanzi reminded loudly. Tang Zheng immediately summoned his battle spirit sword. The sword light shone brightly and turned into a stream of light, carrying the two of them towards the entrance of the valley. Tian Chanzi flew in the air, his speed even faster than Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng felt that his true qi was rapidly depleting. In the past, he only used the Imperial Sword technique to defend against enemies and did not bear the weight of others. Now, it was the weight of two people, and he had to avoid the flying rocks below. Multitasking not only consumed his mind, but also consumed a large amount of true qi, making it almost unbearable for him. Bang! Suddenly, a huge rock was blown up and fiercely collided with the battle spirit sword. Tang Zheng and Marshall could not stand steadily and immediately fell down. Below, flames overflowed into the sky and huge rocks flew everywhere. Even if they did not die, they would still be severely injured. Heaven Monk was still a distance away from the two of them, and the distant water could not put out the nearby fire. Tang Zheng hugged Wu and spun in the air, using his back to block the flying rocks. No! Wu turned pale with fright, his eyes immediately turned red as he blurted out. He wanted to struggle out of his embrace, but he was unable to resist Tang Zheng's strength. No! Martial's heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife. If anything happened to Tang Zheng, she would be even more heartbroken than if she was injured. With a few rumbling explosions, huge rocks flew up from below and crashed into Tang Zheng. Even if he did not die from the huge impact, he would still lose a layer of skin. Tang Jing cursed inwardly. Just how many explosives were buried in the Li Palace? This series of explosions almost blew the entire valley into the sky. He hurriedly channeled the chaotic Vajra spell, trying to use his steel-like body to block it. Be careful. Tian Chanzi also shouted loudly and rushed over as fast as lightning. Ji. Xiao Bai called out and jumped down from Tang Zheng's body. Xiao Bai, don't. Tang Zheng shouted to stop him, but it was useless. Xiao Bai quickly fell. Tang Zheng's heart was in his throat, but he did not understand the meaning behind Xiao Bai's actions. Boom! A ball of flames lit up below, wrapping around the huge flying rock and immediately turning it into a pool of lava. Obviously, this ball of flame was spat out by Xiao Bai. It had already disappeared into the flames. Suddenly, a white figure soared into the sky from the flames. Xiao Bai. Seeing that, Tang Zheng was overjoyed and blurted out. But in the next second, he opened his mouth wide and looked at the white figure in disbelief. How was this Xiao Bai? Xiao Bai was a small child, but this figure was as big as a tiger. 4 of its hooves stepped on the air, and 4 balls of flames emerged from beneath its feet. It stepped on the flames and soared into the air, flying as if it was walking on flat ground. Xiao Bai, this is Xiao Bai. Tang Jing cried out in shock. This was indeed Xiao Bai, but it had grown bigger. Tang Zheng had never thought that Xiao Bai would actually grow bigger, and he did not know when it had this ability. Xiao Bai caught Tang Zheng and Marshall, stepped on the flames and soared into the air, dodging the flying rocks. The 2 of them laid on its back, their hearts thumping. They were still afraid, but they were also pleasantly surprised. Tang Zheng could not help but stroke Xiao Bai's snow-white fur, and Xiao Bai comfortably called out twice in response. Tian Chanzi looked at this scene, and was also in a daze. Gradually, his eyes lit up. No one could see through Xiao Bai's origins, it had too many secrets hidden on its body. Tian Chanzi could not help but click his tongue in wonder. This little guy's power seems to have increased by a lot, and it can even transform. Tang Zheng, this brat, really picked up a treasure. The explosions on the ground did not stop, and waves of air surged into the sky. However, lying on Xiao Bai's back, the 2 of them were not affected at all. 4 hooves stepped on the air, stepping on the flames, and quickly rushed out of the valley, 1 in front and 1 behind Tian Chanzi. Not long after, they finally rushed out of the valley. After landing, looking at the hellish valley behind them, the 3 of them felt a lingering fear. If not for Xiao Bai transforming to save them, the consequences would have been unimaginable. They faintly felt a lingering fear. The Li Palace was empty, but left behind such a big trap, causing them to be caught off guard, and almost died here. Tang Zheng rubbed Xiao Bai's head, deeply moved. Xiao Bai, this is all thanks to you. Squeak squeak. Chapter 755. When did you know how to transform? Tang Jing curiously asked. This body was not just a little bit more powerful than the original Xiao Budian, especially the 4 hooves stepping on the air, the soles of his feet igniting a fire, handsome to the point of dropping dregs. Xiao Bai squeaked twice, seeming quite pleased with itself. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. He couldn't understand Xiao Bai's squeaks, so it was pointless to ask. However, there was no doubt that Xiao Bai had become stronger, which made him happy from the bottom of his heart. Maybe during the time it was under the palace, its cultivation had a breakthrough. Tang Jing guessed. Tian Chanzi also looked deeply at Xiao Bai, then turned his gaze to the ruined valley, saying worriedly, now that all the clues have been cut off, what should we do? He was resourceful, but he was also at his wit's end. Tang Jing frowned. Since the Li Palace is empty, they definitely won't show themselves so easily. It's already impossible to follow the clues to the Azure Dragon Hall and the Lord. Yes. Impossible. Tian Chanzi shook his head helplessly. Moreover, since they are so wary of us, it means that the other party's scheme is not small. The more they want to hide, the worse the situation will be. Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. What's there to be afraid of? Tang Zheng took a deep breath, and simply said boldly. Tian Chanzi finally squeezed out a smile. You little brat are quite open-minded, this attitude is very good. You're right, counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. I want to see what kind of tricks the mysterious Azure Dragon Hall and the Lord can play in the end. Moreover, this time it's not like we didn't gain anything. Your little thing actually transformed, this is worthy of celebration. Tang Zheng happily patted Xiao Bai's head, saying, that makes sense, and it can even fly, this is too amazing. However, it will be so big in the future that it won't be convenient to bring it out, so it can only be placed in Sumer world. Hearing the name, Sumer under heaven, Tian Chanzi couldn't help but say with envy, you brat, your luck is good. You even managed to obtain Qin Shi Huang's Sumer under heaven. Tang Jing chuckled. It's just luck. Creak creak. Suddenly, Xiao Bai called out again. The three of them immediately looked over and saw a flash of white light on its body. It actually turned back into its original appearance. Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment before he burst into laughter. Xiao Bai, you're really amazing. Xiao Bai nodded proudly. With a kick of his little legs, he jumped onto Tang Zheng's shoulder and rubbed his little head against Tang Zheng's head. Tang Zheng, you will definitely encounter more dangerous situations in the future. For the sake of your life, you must truly master the sword controlling technique and reach the level of flying on a sword. Flying on the sword. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. Even if he was flying on the sword, the distance was too short and unstable. That was why he was shot down by the flying rocks. You can practice flying on the sword when you are in the golden core stage. This has many similarities with the sword controlling technique. You used to know the sword controlling technique, so it won't be difficult for you to master it now. Tian Chanzi said. Flying on the sword, then I won't use a car to travel in the future. I'll just go straight on the sword. Tang Zheng was slightly excited. Tian Chanzi nodded and said, logically speaking, that's true. However, you must have had a profound experience just now. Flying on the sword consumes a lot of true qi. If you want to fly on the sword for a long distance, then you must have enough profound skills and true qi. Tang Zheng heard this and his expression darkened. Although he was now in the second grade of the Golden Core stage, it was obviously impossible for him to fly on the sword for a long time. He could only use this method to save his life at a critical moment. Fine. Tang Zheng threw away his distracting thoughts and took one step at a time. One day, he would be able to fly for a long distance. That would be the same as the legendary immortals. Just thinking about it made him very excited. I've taught you the sword controlling technique before, and flying on the sword is to cultivate the sword controlling technique to the extreme. You just need to practice more. Tang Zheng nodded and said, I will definitely practice more. This is a life-saving ability. This trip was not successful. The three of them set off to return to the capital. Along the way, Tang Zheng kept practicing flying on the sword and finally had some gains. Flying on the sword was mainly to control the weight of the war soul sword and then fly in the air. The control of the true qi and the war soul sword had to be perfect. This was not something that could be mastered in a short period of time. It had to be practiced many times. Then, before they even returned to the capital, on the way, Suing Tian called and told him that there was a clue about the missing people and asked him to rush over immediately. Hearing this news, Tian Chanzi also volunteered to accompany him. He still remembered the mountain and river blood sacrifice array. At that time, the demon god wanted to use this method to bring the demon clan back. Even Tian Chanzi thought about whether he could bring back the righteous people of sky beyond heaven. However, after hearing about Qin Shi Huang, Tian Chanzi gave up on this idea. The mountain and river blood sacrifice array had to kill tens of thousands of people. The killing sin was too heavy. In the future, like Qin Shi Huang, he would be condemned by the heavens. At that time, the gains would not make up for the losses. Even a fierce person like Qin Shi Huang could not escape. Tian Chanzi did not think that he could escape. Moreover, he could not bear it. After all, he was not a person who could do anything for the sake of his goals. He felt that it was more reliable to rely on the heaven stairway of Buzhou Mountain to bring back the cultivators of sky beyond heaven. In fact, during this period, he had been trying his best to find the heaven and earth obsidian to rebuild the heaven stairway, but to no avail. If he knew that Tang Jing had collected more than 60 pieces of heaven and earth obsidian, and that there were still heaven and earth obsidian under the imperial palace, he would probably tear down the imperial palace and dig out the heaven and earth obsidian to rebuild the heaven stairway. Tang Jing frowned and said, "Hundred-Faced Star Lord is really unwilling to give up. He is preparing to activate the mountain and river blood sacrifice array again. Moreover, he has attacked so many people." Tian Chanzi knew that Tang Jing and Hundred-Faced Star Lord had encountered each other in the island nation. He patted his shoulder and advised, "Don't worry. Last time, we destroyed his conspiracy and killed the demon god. This time, we will also succeed in stopping him. We must stop him. Otherwise, tens of thousands of people will die." Tang Jing said resolutely. His heart was not made of stone, and he could not stand by and watch so many of his compatriots get killed without doing anything. Moreover, if he succeeds, then this world will really be in chaos. Tian Chanzi also understood this principle. If the demon race returned, then even his cultivation would not be enough. This world would definitely be occupied by the demon race. There was no doubt that the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. The three of them rushed as fast as lightning to the destination that Suing Tian had given them, the Great Northwest. Tang Jing still remembered that during the military training, he had carried out a special mission and came to this area. The demon god was summoned by the remnants of the demon race in a small mountain outside the border. It seemed that Hundred-Faced Star Lord was preparing to repeat the same trick and activate the mountain and river blood sacrifice array again. As soon as the three of them got off the plane, a military jeep took them straight to a military camp in the suburbs. Suing Tian was already waiting at the door to welcome them. Seeing Tang Jing, he revealed a relieved smile. But when he saw Tian Chanzi, his expression could not help but stiffen. He immediately recognized Tian Chanzi. This face was deeply imprinted in his mind. He would never forget it. An expert. This thought immediately appeared in his mind. He was incomparably reverent as he quickly stepped forward and said, "Welcome, the three of you." His eyes, however, swept over Tian Chanzi, as if he wanted to study him thoroughly. Tian Chanzi's eyes widened, not angry but imposing, scaring Suing Tian to the point that he shrunk his neck and quickly averted his gaze, saying embarrassedly, "Senior Tian Chanzi is also here, then this time we will definitely win." Tian Chanzi did not bat an eyelid. He did not say a word, looking like an expert. Tang Jing ignored Suing Tian's excited and reverent mood and asked straightforwardly, "What exactly is going on? Let's go in first." Suing Tian's expression became serious as he said in a deep voice. Not long after, the three of them arrived at a room with a sand table. Suing Tian went straight to the sand table and said, "According to our intelligence, the missing people's final destination is this mountain range." There was an undulating mountain range in the sand table, which was majestic and magnificent. Tian Shan. Tian Chanzi recognized this mountain range at a glance. "Yes, senior, it is Tian Shan. The missing people's final destination is Tian Shan," Suing Tian said. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi looked at each other. Tang Zheng said in surprise, "Could it be that they are preparing to set up the mountain and river blood sacrifice array in Tian Shan?" Tian Chanzi nodded in agreement. "It is very likely. Tian Shan is one of the major mountain ranges in Huaxia. Moreover, there are many legends about Tian Shan. It is said that Tian Shan is the mountain closest to the sky. Although this cannot be confirmed, one thing is certain. Since ancient times, Tian Shan is rich in spiritual energy. It is a paradise that many cultivation sects are very fond of. There are many sections." Tang Zheng heard this and could not help but think of Mount Buzhou. Mount Buzhou was connected to sky beyond. It was indeed a divine mountain. Could it be that Tian Shan was also connected to the sky? Tang Zheng did not know, and said, "That is to say, 100 Faces Star Lord chose Tian Shan as an extremely powerful location to lead the demons back." "Yes." Tian Chanzi nodded. "Setting up this array here would have the effect of half the effort. 100 Faces Star Lord was really good at scheming." Suing Tian heard the two of them and his face became very serious. He said, "You all know that the Northwest region has always been the weakest area under our control. Especially in the past few years, the spread of terrorist forces has caused us to be in a terrible situation. Moreover, some of the local people do not trust us. Instead, they are covering up for the enemy. This time, many of the missing people are locals, but they did not report it. If we did not follow the vine to find the melon here, we would not have known about this situation." Tang Zheng nodded. In the past few years, this area was indeed a paradise for terrorists. From time to time, there would be wind and rain, causing people to be in a state of panic. This was the best place for 100 Faces Star Lord. Even if he had captured so many people, he could still keep the secret as much as possible. If Tang Zheng had not informed Suing Tian earlier, they would definitely have ignored this matter. Since we have found them, then we will enter Tian Shan and drag them out. We must not let them succeed. Tian Chanzi said resolutely. Chapter 756. It wasn't just Tang Zheng's group that was sending troops to Heavenly Mountain. Suing Tian was leading a large group of troops towards Heavenly Mountain with great momentum. Heavenly Mountain was the largest mountain range in the northwest. It was also the mountain range furthest from the ocean. The towering mountain separated this region into two parts, north and south. Moreover, Heavenly Mountain stretched endlessly, directly reaching the border of the country. The mechanized troops moved very quickly. Tang Zheng's group sat in the military off-road vehicle and watched the gradually moving Heavenly Mountain reveal its majestic body. They couldn't help but be deeply attracted. If the mountain river blood sacrifice array was used in such a place filled with outstanding people, it would definitely be a stain on this place. Tang Zheng silently clenched his fists. He definitely couldn't let such a cruel thing happen. Along the way, Suing Tian explained the knowledge of Heavenly Mountain to them, as well as the known information. This region had always been a deserted place, but recently, this place had become much more densely populated. This mountain is so tall and deep. Do you know where those people were taken? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Suing Tian shook his head, "We don't know yet. There is also no clear information from the satellite surveillance." Tian Chanzi said indifferently, "Since the 100 Change Star Sovereign is doing this, then your satellite definitely won't be able to capture it. He definitely has a way to avoid your satellite and make it blind. Isn't the 100,000 mountains the best proof?" Suing Tian said resentfully, "Senior is right. The satellite surveillance of the 100,000 mountains didn't send back any useful information. Everyone wanted to know the situation in the 100,000 mountains, but now that the 100,000 mountains had been occupied by the 100 Change Star Sovereign, demonic beasts ran rampant. The troops sent to investigate had all been annihilated, so no one dared to send anyone else. If you want to use the mountain river blood sacrifice array, it isn't as simple as you think. Aside from people, you must have the right time and the right place. The right place is the most important. Tian Chanzi was quite talkative and spoke bluntly. Suing Tian raised his eyebrows and was overjoyed. Senior, please enlighten me. Since this mountain is called Heavenly Mountain, it's a place close to the sky. In order to set up this formation, it must be at the highest peak. That's because that's where the spiritual chi is the densest. It's the best place for the formation to operate. When Suing Tian heard this, he rolled his eyes and blurted out, Tuomu, or peak. Tang Zhang and the other two looked at him suspiciously. Suing Tian hurriedly explained, Tuomu, or peak is the first peak of Heavenly Mountain, the highest peak. It is the peak closest to the heavens, as Senior said. Those people should be on Tuomu, or peak. Since we have a goal, let's go for it. Tang Jing nodded. The Heavenly Mountain stretched for tens of thousands of miles. The army followed the winding mountain road for a long time before finally reaching the end of the road. Cars could no longer reach the destination, so everyone got off their cars and walked. These people were the elites of the army and the elites of the National Security Bureau. Whether it was their physical strength or endurance, there was no doubt about it. Therefore, the marching speed was not slow. However, with Tang Jing, Heaven Monk and the rest leading the way, these elites were left behind. Seeing the few of them casually crossing the mountains like they were taking a stroll, the group of elites were also shocked. After walking for a few days and nights in the mountains, the army finally saw a towering mountain in the distance. The mountain peak was covered in white snow, towering into the clouds, and there was no end in sight. Looking at this scene, Tang Jing couldn't help but think of the Buzhou Mountain in the 100,000 Mountains. Buzhou Mountain was also so majestic, covered in white snow. Suing Tian pointed to the snow mountain and said, That's Tuomu, or peak. It's covered in white snow all year round. Don't think that it's already summer outside and the heat is unbearable. That mountain is a real world of ice and snow, and the conditions are very bad. Director, there's a situation. Suddenly, someone called out in a low voice. Suing Tian was shocked and hurried to the source of the sound. Tang Zhang and the others also gathered around and saw several soldiers squatting in front of a low bush. Director, these branches were cut off, which means that someone has been here. This place was almost uninhabited, and it was impossible for someone to come here, unless it was some extreme mountaineering enthusiast who would risk their lives to challenge such a dangerous place. There's blood here. Another person called out. Sure enough, there were bloodstains on the ground. Following the bloodstains, they found a corpse in a pile of grass. Dead man. Their faces immediately changed. This is a mountaineering enthusiast. Look at his equipment, it's very professional. The soldier was experienced and knowledgeable. There are many mountaineering enthusiasts here every year, and many people have fallen from the mountain and lost their lives. Ha! This is a foreigner. Tang Zhang looked at the corpse curiously. It's not strange. This kind of extreme sport is mostly done by foreigners. They don't even need to climb from our country, but directly sneak in from the neighboring country's Tian Shan mountain range. We can't detect them at all. Then wouldn't it be too easy to sneak into the country? That's not it, because the road to sneak into the country is not peaceful. I heard that there are still terrorists lurking in that mountain range, and the terrain is steep. If you don't pay attention, you will lose your life. Only those professional mountaineers would choose this path. The terrorists are hiding in this mountain range. Tang Zhang had heard many rumors about these terrorists. Suing Tian sighed faintly and said, You don't know how powerful these people are. They are like lunatics. It's impossible to reform them. They are just the same, so it's a headache. Many of our soldiers have died in their hands. When the other soldiers heard this, their faces darkened. Many of them were soldiers who were stationed in this area all year round. They hated these terrorists. But they were like locusts, impossible to exterminate. Moreover, they were secretly in contact with foreign terrorist forces, and even trained by them. Then, they returned to the country and stirred up trouble. In short, this group of terrorists was extremely difficult to deal with. They were a huge problem for the country and the people. Tang Zheng had an idea, and said, if they really are in that mountain range, after dealing with the mountain and river blood sacrifice array, we might be able to walk a little longer and annihilate them all. Unexpectedly, Su Tian was not optimistic and said, you don't know, the military has already been dispatched many times, but they are like rats, burrowing into a hole as soon as the wind blows. It's impossible to find them. Tang Zheng, however, did not believe in this evil. He thought to himself that he should first solve the problem in front of him. This person's throat was cut. It was a very cruel method of killing. Maybe he met the 100 Faces Star Lord and the others, so he was killed. Tang Zheng looked at the bloody wound on the corpse's throat and said, judging from the condition of the corpse, it shouldn't have been too long. If we catch up, we should be able to make it in time. Immediately, everyone increased the speed of their march and rushed towards Tumur Peak. Tang Zheng and the others did not care about shocking the world, and directly used the shrinking ground into an inch technique, moving as fast as lightning. Su Yingtian's cultivation was not weak, and could barely keep up with the speed of the few of them. However, the other soldiers, even if they used all their strength, were unable to keep up with their whereabouts. They could only be left far behind. At the foot of Tuomur Mountain, the four of them stopped at the same time. This was because they saw the messy footprints on the white snow. Many of the footprints had already been covered by the white snow. It was obvious that they had been walking for a long time. What shocked the three of them the most was that there were so many footprints that it made their hearts turn cold. I'm afraid there really are tens of thousands of people. Su Yingtian exclaimed after a long while. I'm afraid it's more than that. Tang Zheng said. There are so many people. How did they get them to willingly go up this cold snow mountain? Tian Chanzi said, the 100 Faces Star Lord has many ways to control people. With his cultivation, it is not impossible to control tens of thousands of people. Su Yingtian sucked in a breath of cold air and said, then what are we waiting for? Let's go up and stop them. Tang Zheng looked at Su Yingtian and said, Chief Su, the one going up is the 100 Faces Star Lord. It will be very dangerous. You should stay at the foot of the mountain. Su Yingtian's expression turned cold and said, Tang Zheng, do you think I'm afraid of death? I, Su Yingtian, have never been afraid of death. I don't know how many times I have wandered around the gates of hell. Moreover, this is my duty, the duty of a soldier. In the face of war, how can I retreat? Then leave a message and tell the others not to go up the mountain. Su Yingtian shook his head without hesitation, that is also their duty. They are not deserters. In the face of a villain, no matter how powerful the other party is, the only choice is to rush up and fight. Tang Zheng shook his head helplessly. Let's go. Don't waste time. Su Yingtian urged. Climbing the snow mountain was much more difficult than the previous mountain path. However, for these people, although it was difficult, it was not difficult to move forward. They only left shallow footprints in the snow and quickly went up the mountain. The cold wind blew, making people's cheeks burn with pain. But the three people directly ignored it and strode forward. Suddenly, Tian Chanzi, who was at the front, stopped and waved his hand, motioning for the others to stop. What's wrong? There are people in front. The three people were already halfway up the mountain. In front of them was an endless expanse of snow, but there were no traces of people. They are lying in the snow. Tian Chanzi pointed in the distance and said. The three people were also lying behind a big stone covered in snow. They stuck out their eyes and looked around. Sure enough, there was something strange in the snow in the distance. 100 Faces Star-Lord left behind scouts. Tang Jing frowned suspiciously. With 100 Faces Star-Lord's arrogant character, how could he be so cautious? I will go over and kill them. Tang Jing volunteered. His figure flashed and drew a thin line in the snow. His figure was particularly eye-catching in the snow, and the other party obviously found him immediately. However, before they had time to react, Tang Jing had already rushed in front of them. With a flash of his sword, several people's necks were left with wounds. Blood spurted out and dyed the ground red. He did not show mercy. The other party was 100 Faces Star-Lord's people, so they deserved to die. Besides, it was too risky to leave them alive. Chapter 757. He saw that the people who died on the ground were not Huaxia people. Instead, they had a Western face, a big beard, and a fierce expression. Suing Tian and the others also caught up. When they saw this scene, they also opened their eyes wide in shock. What's going on? There are still Westerners under the 100 Faces Star-Lord. Tang Jing shook his head, indicating that he did not know. That's not right. Suddenly, Suing Tian squatted down and carefully examined the corpses. Finally, he found a book on one of them. What is this? Scripture, they are terrorists. Suing Tian's expression suddenly changed. Why are these terrorists guarding Timur Peak? Tang Jing had an idea. Could it be that the 100 Faces Star-Lord has subdued this group of terrorists? Humph. A cold snort interrupted Tang Jing, and Tian Chanzi said disdainfully, do you think that the 100 Faces Star-Lord would have no bottom line? He is a very proud person, how could he look at these unrated terrorists? Suing Tian was speechless. If those terrorists heard Tian Chanzi say that they were unrated, they would probably be so angry that they wanted to kill someone. Tang Jing said doubtfully, then this is strange, this group of people are not the subordinates of the 100 Faces Star-Lord, then why are they on guard here? The few of them looked at each other, unable to guess the reason. Continue to climb, and all the questions will be answered. Wu said. Thus, the few of them climbed the mountain again. Along the way, they encountered a few more waves of enemies. Without exception, they were all terrorists and were all killed. The expressions of the few of them became more and more serious. The closer they got to the top of the mountain, the more terrorists there were. It was as if the terrorists were out in full force. Who had such great power to invite these terrorists? Why does it feel like this is not the style of the 100 Faces Star-Lord? Tian Chanzi muttered to himself. Tang Jing's heart moved. In fact, he also had this feeling, this was not the style of the 100 Faces Star-Lord, but, other than him, who else would use the Mountain River blood sacrifice array? The demon god was already dead. Could it be that there were other demon survivors? No. If the demon race really had evil intentions, they would have set up the Mountain River blood sacrifice array long ago, and not just used a small array like last time, which only led the demon god back. This time, it was the return of the entire demon race. These were two completely different matters. There was no comparison. Finally, the peak of the mountain was in sight. Countless people gathered at the peak of the mountain. Roughly estimating, there were more than 10,000 people. Most of them had their hands and feet chained up like prisoners. There was no way for them to escape. Each and every one of them had a look of horror on their faces as they looked around helplessly, hoping that someone would come and save them. Some of them had already given up hope and were like walking corpses. Suing Tian was extremely excited and said in a low voice, "We finally found them. Let's go and save them." Calm down. Tian Chanzi immediately grabbed the restless Suing Tian and said, "100 Faces Star Sovereign is up there. Even if we rush up there, it will be difficult for us to do so. We can't fight him head-on. We can only outsmart him. Then what should we do?" Are we just going to watch our fellow countrymen die? Su Yingtian's face was flushed red. If you rush up, they'll still die. It's just that you're one more. Tian Chanzi said mercilessly. Su Yingtian was speechless. He knew that Tian Chanzi was right and that he was too reckless. But we can't just sit there and wait for death. We have to think of a way to get up there and figure out the situation. Tang Jing said. Su Yingtian nodded his head like he was pounding garlic. I'll go. Tang Jing volunteered, you guys wait here. Crap, they're making a move. Suddenly, Marshall pointed to the peak of the mountain and said. The few of them immediately looked over and saw that a few of their necks had been cut open. Blood gushed out like a fountain. Tang Zhang's heart trembled. He couldn't help but think of the scene of the demon clan killing people and sacrificing them in order to welcome the demon god back. It was also like this, but there weren't so many of them. These executioners were all terrorists. Tang Zhang couldn't wait to rush up and let them have a taste of their throats. Boom! A ray of light shot up into the sky from the peak of the mountain. A black cloud had unknowingly gathered in the sky. The light rushed into the black cloud, and the black cloud gradually began to rotate. The few of them were attracted by this strange scene at the same time as they stared blankly at the sky. The Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array has been activated. We must stop them. Tang Jing shouted. He no longer cared about exposing himself and rushed towards the peak of the mountain in a flash. A few terrorists were about to commit murder when they felt a pain in their necks. Blood spurted out and one by one, they clutched their necks and fell down in disbelief. Who is it? A series of explosive shouts rang out, only to see a few fiendish-looking terrorists stand out, directly pulling the trigger towards Tang Jing. Tang Jing dodged like a ghost, and all the bullets missed. He swept his gaze and finally saw everything on the mountain peak. The mountain peak was flat, and at this moment, it was filled with tens of thousands of people. The terrorists stood at the outermost periphery, pointing their guns at the innocent people. Irregular bloodlines were drawn on the ground with blood, and the blood of those people just now gathered in the middle of these bloodlines, and finally rose into the light pillar. Why don't I see the 100-form star sovereign? Tang Jing didn't see that thin figure and couldn't help but frown. At such an important moment, the 100-form star sovereign shouldn't be absent. But he couldn't find the figure of the other party in the crowd, which made him puzzled. The people standing at the outermost periphery were all Westerners, and all of them stared at Tang Jing with unfriendly expressions. All the muzzles were locked on him again. Open fire! Bang bang bang! Bullets flew, and many people were hit by stray bullets and fell to the ground dead. Hurry up and stop them! Tang Jing shouted. A few figures also rushed out from under the cliff and went deep into the crowd. The gunshots gradually became fewer and fewer. 100-form star sovereign, come out. Hiding behind the crowd, what kind of expert are you? Tang Jing still couldn't find the 100-form star sovereign, and his heart was anxious, so he directly shouted loudly. The 100-form star sovereign still didn't appear. Suddenly, a familiar voice rang out, if you can't kill them, you can die yourselves. You must make the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array succeed. Tang Zhang's head trembled. This voice was too familiar, and he must have heard it somewhere before. Before he could figure it out, he saw some of the terrorists directly cut their throats and let the blood spurt out. Immediately, the light pillar became brighter, and the black clouds in the sky spun faster and faster. A big hole began to appear in the center of the vortex. Tang Jing knew that if the Mountain River Blood Sacrifice Array succeeded, the demon army would descend from the black hole, and there would be no way to save the situation. These terrorists were not afraid of death at all. One after another, they stepped forward and sacrificed their own lives. Tang Zhang's hair stood on end. The terrorists were indeed crazy, just like those suicide attacks. For the sake of their so-called ideals, they didn't treat themselves as humans at all. He couldn't let them continue like this. Tang Zheng's gaze turned and stared at the light pillar in the center of the mountain peak and the complicated bloodlines on the ground. If he destroyed these, would the array stop? Tang Zheng immediately slashed out, and the sharp sword light went straight for the light pillar and the bloodlines. Then, an angry roar exploded, and a huge figure rushed out from the crowd, attempting to receive the sword. Pooh! The sword light directly split the figure in half. However, Tang Zheng's eyes widened as he stared at the huge corpse on the ground in a daze. Werewolf! Tang Zheng blurted out. The one who died on the ground was actually a werewolf. Ever since he saw the werewolf at the martial arts competition, Tang Zheng hadn't seen it again. He was very clear that this was a subordinate of the Western Empire's Rockefeller family. At this moment, to see a werewolf here, it was definitely not simple. Moreover, the enemies all had Western faces, so it was impossible for them to be the subordinates of the 100-form star sovereign. No wonder they felt a little strange just now. It turned out that all of this was quite different from what they had expected, and they had made a big mistake. The reason why the 100-form star sovereign did not appear was because all of this was not led by him, but by the mastermind behind it, the Rockefeller family. Tang Zheng immediately thought of the young Lord Lewis's face and shouted, "Lewis, you must be here. Get the hell out here." He was extremely angry. On one hand, he was tired of dealing with the 100-form star sovereign, and in the end, there was still this group of people behind his back who almost succeeded. When the others saw this scene, they also noticed that something was wrong, especially Su Yingtian. His expression changed greatly as he muttered to himself, "Lewis, the young lord of the Rockefeller family, could it be that all of this was controlled by him? Other than him, who else could be so crazy?" Tang Zheng said angrily. In this way, all of the questions were answered. No wonder there were so many terrorists, it was definitely the Rockefeller family that controlled them. This was because there had always been rumors in the outside world that these terrorists were funded by these large financial groups, and that they were just acting out a good show. Hurry up and escape down the mountain. Someone will help you. Tang Zheng knew that there was going to be a big battle, so he reminded the innocent people. No one can leave. A tall figure walked out from the crowd. If it was not Lewis, who else could it be? Lewis looked at Tang Zheng overbearingly and said, "No one is allowed to leave. The Mountain River blood sacrifice array must be completed." "Complete your ass. I'll kill you first, and then the Mountain River blood sacrifice array will no longer exist," Tang Zheng said fiercely. Lewis laughed coldly and said, "Tang Zheng, you are still so naive. The return of the demon clan is an irresistible trend. This world is already on the verge of collapse. Only the return of the demon clan and the rule of the world is the right path." "Nonsense." Tang Zheng reprimanded, "The return of the demon clan, the people are in a terrible situation. Can you bear to see that scene?" "Why wouldn't I?" Lewis disagreed. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and said, "Yes, you are not human at all. You are just a bat. Today, I will turn you into a dead bat so that you will never have the chance to suck human blood again."